But you know what it's all encompassed by is Les Grobstein, because he was, however you want to refer to Les at this point, he was Chicago sports. Yes, indeed. And we do welcome you in officially to this Les Grobstein memorial show, tribute show. We lost Les a year ago last night. Now that it's 12:01 and we want to maintain Grobber time, nobody spoke overnight better than Les. As in, he didn't even think about it. When midnight hit, it was the next day. And while I'm sitting here having to think about what day, Tuesday, Les knew the language. He spoke the language, and he probably would have been talking in a cadence something like that. Once it's 12 o'clock, it means it's the next day. It's Tuesday. It's not yesterday. It's not 12. It's today. It's Tuesday. So that's where we land, folks. It is a Tuesday, and I get to be here with you until 5 o'clock this morning. And, man, do we have a lot. We have a lot. And on the TV screen, I'm just catching some more of the post game of the Dallas Tampa Bay game tonight. I watched it, and Dallas beating Tampa Bay 31-14. And just before I came on the air, I thought about Les. This would have been a very complicated game for Les. I don't know which side he would have been on here. He hates the Cowboys. Just hates Dallas. He hated legacy teams. He for some reason other than in Chicago, he kind of, like, when you think about it, and this is a fairly new revelation of mine, maybe even tonight, just trying to figure out where Les would land on Dallas and Tampa Bay. Les Grobstein kind of resented greatness. If it didn't involve one of his teams. Hates winning franchise, hates LeBron James, hates all good so tonight, to get it back down to narrow here, Dallas is Dallas. He hates the Cowboys, right? There's no reason that Les would like the Cowboys. But there's also no reason whatsoever that Les would like Tom Brady. So, hey, the GOAT, more like the sheep, that he would not have wanted to hear GOAT talk. As a matter of fact, he may have given 2 or 3 reasons why Jim McMahon was better than Tom Brady at some point in time. Like that could have happened. So last night, would have been a very complicated game for Les, and I don't know exactly how he would have spoken about it. So, yeah, that's where I am with Les at this moment. See, it's moment to moment with me. I'm still trying to figure out Les Grobstein, and I try to think along with him. What would Les think about it? And I think he would have had a lot of hate for a lot of things that went on in the game last night. That's the way Les would have taken it in. On this Grobber Memorial Show tonight, here is the list of live guests that we will have tonight. And hopefully we will hear from you as well, you, the Grobber fan, the Score fan, the listener. At 12:10, just in about 5 minutes from right now, we will have Scott Grobstein on the show. Scott is Les's son. He is a fellow Illinois State alum like myself. I am very fortunate to have gotten to know Scott, beyond a text message to the Score text machine. I've gotten to know Scott, and he has helped me to understand his father better. And sometimes I think that Scott still tries to figure out his father. So we'll share hopefully a laugh or two with Scott in just a little bit, about 5 minutes from right now. And then after Scott, probably right around 12:30, we're going to have his longtime girlfriend, Kathy, on. If you are a listener to the Score, if you have any interest in Les at all, you know all about Kathy because he spoke so fondly of her, always talked about what he was going to be doing with her, vacations. I met Kathy probably a handful of times before Les's death, and always great. Always great. I was like, why is this person so normal? Wow. This is not necessarily what I would have expected. Running into Les and Kathy with my then girlfriend Kim at the United Center at a Lady Gaga concert. which was just spectacular. Spectacular. I wouldn't have wanted life any other way that night, to run into Les and his girlfriend Kathy with my girlfriend, and just she gets a load of Les. Oh, she got it all. And and she was like, so where does he come from again? I think that was the quoted question from Kim. So that's what we have coming up here shortly. 1 o'clock this morning, I'm looking very forward to this. We will have on Jon Greenberg of The Athletic. If you know Jon, you know how enthusiastic he has been about Les. And for since he's been listening to Chicago radio, or since he's been in Chicago. And then we'll get the origins from Greenberg, exactly when he started listening to Grobber and why and what kept him there, because he has written a lot about Les. And as a matter of fact, if you go on theathletic.com right now, Jon Greenberg has an article up, a survey up about Bum of the Year. That's what Jon and I are going to talk about. We are attempting to do Bum of the Year justice tonight, and the candidates that are up. And I retweeted Jon, so it's on my Twitter page at Mark Grote Sports, or Jon Greenberg's, Jon_Greenberg. But I'll just quickly give you the Bum of the Year candidates right now, and we'll definitely need your calls too, of course. Tony La Russa, Jerry Reinsdorf, Tom Ricketts, Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, a crescendo of grabber anger there going through those names. And then, fill in the blank. Hey, we're doing the best we can with these candidates. So that's what we came up with for that. At 2 o'clock.
NFL News, Urban Meyer, what a piece of crap.
We have so many sound bites. I think that was just, there's a timer that's going to go off in our downtown Chicago studios where Sean Sears is executively producing this show. He's not even pressing buttons. He's just got a timer set up that no matter what's going on, I could be mid-sentence and there'll be a grabber drop, because somehow, some way, we have to attempt to get through all of those. And, I'm not positive that we will. So that's good to point that out. Sean Sears in our downtown Chicago studios, along with Alex Kuhn, helping out. I admit that I am remote, as I am in my home doing the show. This is where I did so many of those grabber shows when I filled in last year after we lost Les, and I was doing it about 3 times a week. So I feel like very comfortable right here. It's perfect that it is Sean producing, because he was the guy that produced a little bit with Les and then with all of my shows and got to know Sean. So it's a little bit of a reunion for us here tonight as well. At 2 o'clock this morning, Mark Potash of the Chicago Sun-Times covers the Bears with me at Haugh Hall. But what Potsy is just a true appreciator of sports talk radio. I know he doesn't like all of it, but he just loves sports, man. He loves sports, and I think he recognizes the companion that radio is, like a lot of us do. It's one of those things, like if you're a radio person, if you're a true radio person, like you get the intimate relationship that exists with it, and you need it. You need it. There's no other way to put it, which is something, too, that I understand, that a lot of people needed less, and still today. I mean, I saw the complaints on Twitter today when I was posting stuff. There's always people, and I appreciate you guys. I got no problem with it. People saying it's not the same, and that they don't want to hear national radio, and they don't want to hear recorded interviews. Les was, that just kind of tells you how unique and special Les was, that he was able to pull something off like that he was able to do 5 days a week, sometimes 6 days a week, sometimes more than 5 hours in a show. It's pretty hard to find that person. So while I do appreciate it all, it just makes Les all that more spectacular, and kind of like we truly didn't know what we had when we had Les doing those overnights, because, man, to pull that off 5 days a week, like I'm good for a few nights a week. I guess I was good for a few nights a week, and I should be fine tonight getting through 5 hours of pretty much unscripted radio. But no, I'm probably not built to do this 5 days a week. I don't think any of us really are, and Les was, and it was a worthwhile resource when Les Grobstein was doing it. So Mark Potash at 2:00, 3:00. My guy, Mark Carmen from CHGO. He goes about as far back with Les as I do, and the Carm just has some really good stories. I always get it mixed up, and I should know the story by now, but it's Carmen helped Les move, I think. I'll just leave it at that. Do you need any more than that if you know Les?
That is incredible. I am so excited for that.
What more, Sean?
Oh my God. Can you imagine he probably had enough of those game day programs to build furniture out of. Can you imagine that?
Oh man. Well, yeah. So, and there's a good story attached to it with Mark Carmen, and Carmen is a night owl. I don't understand his sleep schedule. I'm good friends with Carm, so that's why I know minutia about his life. He has a weird sleep schedule, and when I was doing those overnights, it'd be 2:30 in the morning. Yeah. Oh, there's a Carm text, and that's just the beauty of Carm. And so Carm will come on with us at 3:00, and he can stay on as long as he wants. And then at 4:00, fun's over. Yeah, the boss wants to come on. No, I'm kidding. Mitch Rosen, program director here at the Score, obviously the person who hired. I think he hired Les. Did he hire Les twice? Yeah, I think he did. We'll ask Les, or we'll ask Mitch about how Grobber Score was born. Grobber Score was born, though, actually on Belmont, and that does predate Mitch's time with the Score. I think it was, it probably was Ron Gleason who actually initially hired Les, and then I think it was Drew Hayes. Drew Hayes who ended up getting rid of Les, and then he went down the dial to 1,000, I think with Mitch, I want to say. And then something happened where that job no longer existed, and then Mitch had him back at the Score, or something like that. I may have just totally botched that. So those are questions. I'm putting this down here right now. Questions for Mitch. I got to ask the boss good questions. So we're going to put that one down for Mitch. Also, so that's the guest list. Scott Grobstein here in moments, just waiting for word from Sean on that. With Kathy, Jon Greenberg, Mark Potash, Mark Carmen, Mitch Rosen, and I am told that the one and only Scott Grobstein, son of a Les, is joining us right now.
What'd you call me? What's up, buddy?
Son of a Les. I saw you the last time actually, I've seen you a couple times recently.
Oh, yeah.
I got to see you at the Northwestern game. That was the Northwestern DePaul game, which we'll talk about here in a second. And then I saw you at a Bears game. I think didn't the McCaskies hook you up with a game? Give us the rundown on the Bears game first, and then we'll talk about the DePaul experiences too, and we'll talk Grobber here, man. I always got so many questions for you. So let's start with those two kind of cool sporting events that I just kind of happened to see you at.
Yeah, this is, first of all, of course, thanks for having me on. This is an absolute honor to be doing this. We, unfortunately, but fortunately, had to do this a year ago today. The fortunate part was I got to know you and everybody over there. Mitch has been unbelievable, and people like George McCaskey, and I heard from Pat Fitzgerald this summer from Northwestern, and they called me up to be a part of the Northwestern DePaul game. The people who have reached out, I mean, I'm just the kid. I'm not the legend. I'm just the 43-year-old guy who has my own world that I take care of, but the people who have reached out and offered me the experiences to be a part of things. And I was at the Bears-Miami game, and I think that was probably the first when I saw you called it, man. You're like, this is going to be the last nice weather game there is. I want to say it was in the mid-60s, and it was I think we all know it went downhill from there, but just a great experience being out there. And I think that was the first time I realized that boy, Justin Fields is pretty fun, man. As long as we get some, I mean, that was the game when we were all like, oh my gosh, that guy's running like crazy, but holy cow, he cannot do that for a sustained career. So that was our hypothesis of the game. But a lot of fun that day. I was able to take my oldest to that one and a couple buddies and just enjoy it. The Northwestern DePaul game was truly special because I know my father was heavily connected to both schools for decades, and they called me and asked me to help present the Player of the Game award that he always presented, whether it was at DePaul or Northwestern. Obviously this year it happened to be in Evanston, and I was able to bring my little guy for that because for me, that's what I want to do. I want to pass, as much knowledge and experience that I've learned about sports from my father down to my kids. And so to have my little guy at that game, who is very much my sports kid, you've met Mr. Nicholas.
Yep.
He's deep in the game, man. He loved it, and they let him go on the court with me afterwards. And Chase Audice from Northwestern, the player of the game, was just unbelievable. Let Nicholas hold the plaque, and such a cool experience. So. I mean, that's just like the tip of the iceberg, but so much fun.
You're talking about your son, Nicholas, Mr. Nicholas, who I met at Ed Grauber's funeral, his services. And,
Sure.
When I first met you, I was like, yeah, Scott doesn't really seem like he doesn't seem like Les, and Les is that's not a
Nope.
you know what I mean? Like,
I do.
All right,
Yes.
I'm like,
Thank
okay, he's normal. I'm stuttering here because I wanted to say because Scott seems pretty normal.
Yeah, there were some socially interesting moments with my father, but we all know that. Yeah, it's funny. Not to get it too serious and emotional for a minute, but one thing that my father definitely did this weekend. We'll definitely jump back into sports, but
yeah,
I was going to not mention this, but it's been a very interesting weekend for my family. My oldest, Ben, I just mentioned him. He's fine. I want to preface that he's absolutely okay, but he was in a pretty bad car accident Saturday night on his way home from work, in which the car was the details I'll try to evade, but the car was totaled. He's miraculously okay without a scratch, and I immediately, of course, went to thank you up above for protecting him. So not to bring it all, emo that quick. I know I just totally made that a downer, but that's kind of been that's been on the mind all weekend, just how my oldest was able to walk away with nothing. And obviously I thank God for that, and thank my father and all the miracles that happened. So just wanted to get that out of the way. The power of if y'all out there don't believe in prayer and guardian angels and all that, man, I learned it this weekend firsthand. So
well, thanks for sharing that, man. Yeah. No, man, Scott, thanks for being vulnerable and sharing that with me and our audience. I mean, that means a lot. And I don't have kids, but I felt that for I was imagining maybe one of my nieces or nephews, and they get into it. What? And your kid walks away. I mean, it would definitely give a new appreciation for something more important than ourselves.
Yeah, and I think the fact that he called me and said, it's that dreaded phone call a parent doesn't want to get, but hey, Dad, I was in an accident. I think my car is totaled. I'm like, I don't care about the car. How are you? Of course. Immediately, if the car's a car, I don't care. Got there, and it was rough, real rough. Just the car was in rough shape, and as soon as I got there, they were like, he's fine. He walked over to the ambulance himself. He's totally fine, totally alert, and I'm like, yeah, someone had something to do with that, big time.
Oh, God. Well, God bless Ben and you, man, and we'll keep the prayer. And it's good. No, I think that's good for everybody to hear, everybody listening and understanding, what's going on out there. So really appreciate you telling us that. And as for Mr. Nicholas, though, when I saw him, I had sized you up, and and I was like, okay. And then I saw and Ben, for that matter, and then I saw Nicholas, And I was like, oh, my God, there he is. He's the heir apparent. He looks a little like him. He was a little bit misbehaved.
Yeah,
you know,
a feisty
he was,
one.
Yeah, he was a little feisty. Yeah, I don't know if misbehaved is right.
I got you, yeah.
You know, pushed the ball. I was like, okay, I think we got something. And now you tell me that he is the sports fan. So I think I got a good eye for Grobber talent.
Oh, yeah. We will play, indoor football. He will every morning he will ask me, who won the TCU Ohio State game. I'm like, you don't want to know. But that was the title game. But that'll be his first words in the morning when I kiss him goodbye on my way to work. Is who won the Bulls? Oh man, DeMar DeRozan. I'm like, it's happening. It's happening.
Yeah.
So it's my mini me. But obviously I have, they're my two boys, and I have uber strong connection. I mean, you tell people with kids. I always use the phrase, "You'll never love anything more," and there's nothing more you can say about it than that. They're both unbelievable, both very different, but I try to pass down what I've learned and the experiences that I've learned from my father down to them, and they get some laughs. They get it. They get how they're how he was, and they've met him, and they knew. Oh boy,
What was that? What was that like though? Like, was he just? Sure. And I know your relationship with him probably wasn't all perfect, but what was Les thought of? Like when he come over for family events, was there preparation involved? Like, what was it like when Grandpa Les was coming to the house?
Yeah, and that's what we refer to him as Grandpa Les. He was like a little paparazzi. He had to take pictures of everything and everybody. And man, anytime Ben's a performer for plays and musicals, he'd come out there and it would be first thing, "Hey Ben, good job. Hey, got to get a picture." And you could see the friendly eye roll, like, okay, and you knew it was going to be 10 takes because the camera wasn't right, So that was kind of what and they knew that they'd come up with a Home Alone bobblehead or a random gift from a Bears game, and I had to explain to him that this is him, showing his feelings towards you and him expressing what he can towards you, and it's all meant with obviously goodness and kindness, and I think the boys got it. They struggled when it happened a year ago, but they struggled because they saw me going through a lot of stuff, and of course Nicholas, the morning I went out with David Haugh, literally next morning goes, "Daddy, can we play Legos?" I'm like, "Well, no, I got to go to on the air and do this." And "Are you doing more Grandpa Les stuff?" So try explaining that to a 9-year-old, but it was It's been all good stuff. We went through. We have my little baseball sports nook in my basement where I'm at right now, and of course we've got the bobblehead and everything down there. And we'll randomly push the button and be like, "Hey, Grandpa Les can announce the game," and so they, Nicholas gets a part of it, and Ben just kind of, he's older, so he understood the relationship a little bit more than obviously the little guy. So. Yeah, interesting stuff.
Yeah, no, it is. It all makes a lot of sense. You mentioned like the awkward interactions that might occur having Les as your father or the kids having as a grand. Do you have any examples of any stories that you might be able to share with Score Overnight about those moments?
Well, I've told you the infamous no mayo story. We talked. Yes, I can rehash that a little bit because I still get it's still quoted here. When we go to went out for lunch, I don't know. Okay, that was our usual custom to meet once a month. He and I would talk about sports, and there were two incidents. There was he demanded no mayo on a sandwich, but went on a tirade to the poor lady behind the counter and said, "No mayo. If I get it, I'll get sick. I'm not eating it. I'm not taking it. I'm not going to touch it." And you do it so much better, man. I can't.
No, that actually sounded really good. You're cracking me up, man. That sounded great.
Yeah, and I every time I would just find myself kind of like I said, like the Homer Simpson meme where he just cringes back into the bushes. That's kind of what I was doing. I'm like, oh my gosh, what are we doing here? What are we doing? She's got it. She understood that. No mayo. I don't like condiments either, so I get it. I just try not to be aggressive when I order my food. And this poor lady, same restaurant. Like, I can't believe they didn't kick us out, but there was TVs on Sports Center. They were talking about Tim Tebow.
Oh, no.
And, oh, yes. And for whatever reason, my father was a big hater on Tebow. He wanted all the shenanigans and all the stuff he did out of football. I had no problem with it personally.
By the way, your dad. I've just made this discovery tonight. Just think, he resented greatness that was outside the city of Chicago.
Oh, really?
No, he just kind of did. I'm saying he didn't seem to like the great athletes and the great franchises. Like he
was a homer.
He seemed to resent those. Of course he was a homer, but it went even further than that. Not only did he despise other teams or want to beat them, he seemed to resent those. But I just had to barge in with that, man. I'm sorry.
No, I got a Dallas story too for you. I figured that out. I was listening to the opening. I'm like, I got one. Okay, but I'll bring that to you in a second. But this older lady, working there, she had to be in her 60s. She's like, oh, he's such a nice young man, that Tim Tebow, very friendly. and you want to talk about a powder keg going off. He's awful. He's ridiculous. He sucks. Keep him out of dead. I'm like, what are you doing to this lady? And she's like, oh, he's not that bad. And I had to, of course, apologize to the poor lady. I'm like, I'm sorry. I don't mind Tim Tebow. I'm sorry he did that. I think he went to the washroom or something like that. So we had those moments. Yeah, I was like, why him? And there's so many other players. Charles Martin, I get it. Totally get it. Tim Tebow, really? So he's not that bad. So I don't know.
He didn't throw any Bears quarterbacks on their ass.
No, he didn't. He prayed and did the thing and whatever. But I was thinking about the Dallas stuff, and you're absolutely right, man. He would hate on Brady. And now Belichick, they can, all that stuff.
Oh, yeah. Oh, right.
Yeah, of course.
I didn't even put that association together. Yeah, the reason, it's not just because Tom Brady's great. He's a cheater. Everybody knows he's a cheater. He's a deflator. He's a cheater. KMA. That's what would have come out of his mouth.
He's worse than a cheater. Yeah, he would always add that. He's worse than that.
Worse than a cheater.
Worse than a cheater.
It's worse than the farthest one can go with describing some extreme.
100%. Yes. So with Dallas, I remember, besides he'd bring up 44-0 in 85. Of course, he'd bring that up. That's an easy one. But in 1992, and this is where I get this from him, the vivid memory, when the Bears, so it was 91 season, the 92 playoffs, because obviously 92 did get us fired, all that. But 91, they did go to the playoffs and they played Dallas. I went to that game. I was probably seventh grade, and that was the Aikman, Smith, and all that, and they whooped us pretty good here at Soldier Field. And I remember after the game, I had to wait for him to do all the interviews and all that stuff forever, which I didn't hate it as a kid, but that's there.
Oh no, gosh. I'd never really thought about that kind of stuff.
Horrible. But now I think it would be cool. But I'm like, what did you do? Why did you have to ask him all those questions? And he goes, well, I had to ask him how they thought they were going into the Silver Dome and they were going to touch Detroit, and I knew they were going to get there, and I won't say the rest, but went off on a tangent on how Wayne Fontz's Lions were going to just kill the Cowboys.
Oh, man.
It was good times. Yeah.
I got to tell you, man, you have really stepped up your Les Grobstein impersonation. Maybe it's always been there, but
I don't know. I learned from the best, man.
No, I mean,
I'm talking to you, man.
Did I ever tell you the time he dropped in on one of the tailgates that I was at when I was just at a Bears game as a fan?
Oh, gosh. I can only remember. I can only imagine.
This is like years ago, like early Urlacher days, I suppose.
Yeah.
I don't even know where I was working at the time, but I might have had a foot in the score. I don't remember. Anyway,
right.
I was in the parking lot tailgating with friends and family. Yeah. My brother Brian is a season ticket holder, and his wife Priscilla was there, and his wife Priscilla happens to be a Tennessee girl, and so she's got oh boy is it right.
Here we go.
So she's got this big Tennessee. We've got our Bears flag up, and we've got our Chicago flag probably, and Priscilla had to bring my Tennessee flag, so she had her Tennessee flag up. And I told Les, hey, man, you got to come out to our tailgate, brother. Come on. So he comes out because I wanted everybody to meet the great Les Grobstein, my friend who I work with and I know.
Right.
Like, you guys got to meet Les. He's hilarious. So Les comes out there, and there's me and my brother and Priscilla front row. And they're like, oh, it's Les Grobstein. And Les just looks at Priscilla and my brother and just goes, what's with the Tennessee flag?
Yep, I knew it. I knew it was going to be something about that.
What's with the Tennessee flag? Bruce Pearl is garbage.
Oh, gosh, there's another one. Bring him up. Holy cow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think Bruce Pearl was coaching there at the time. So that was his. I think that's, as far as I know, that's the only link to Tennessee hate, unless you could tell me something different.
No, I think he would just do a general, all these yahoos down there, and, he would talk about, just a general
right.
Assumption about the South. And, my sister, she actually went to UK. She went to Kentucky, and I would tell, every time I bring that up, he'd be like, yeah, that was racist. I'm like, oh, okay.
Take it
right.
down.
We'll end that conversation right there. And, so, because I knew, you could push some buttons as far as you can go, but then after a while, this, I've hit a wall, and it's not gonna, it's no longer funny, so I'm just gonna reroute my conversation with him. And
the thing about that, Scott, is maybe I should have done that a few times on the radio, but I never did reroute.
No, and that's what made it great. I love it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the Super Bowl thing. We know that. We get drop it. That was.
Yeah.
I think I told you this. I do remember hearing that, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, he's really pissed off. I got to call this guy." And I actually texted or called him or something. I was like, "What's going on? Why are you so upset?" He's like, "No, we're fine. I'm like,
"Yeah,
I don't know, man."
I know. It did sound fine to me. Yeah,
it sounded a little rough. And I know radio enough and know when things are a bit and when things are real. And you sounded triggered. So yeah, he wouldn't know what triggered means, but it's fine.
Maybe that was part of his magic, because that same thing happened with me, with that, because I kind of was. I don't know if I necessarily wanted to apologize to him because it was rated, but I did want to make sure he was cool.
Right.
And he was like, "Yeah, we're fine." What? He looked at me like nothing ever happened.
Yeah.
So
short-term memory.
Well, I think part it's beautiful.
I think part of that is, obviously, being in this business, you, I guess, kind of have to have clearly thick skin and short-term memory. And, if you let everybody who doesn't like you or whatnot, it's similar to teaching, what I do for a career, but nothing as public as what you guys do. And I think, if you have every, hater coming at you and saying all the stuff and you let it get to you personally, even though we are human, I think it makes for a pretty stressful career. And I just think either his mind wouldn't let him remember that because that wasn't a sports fact, or he just chose not to. He had tunnel vision, man, right? I mean, it was all sports.
Good.
And if it was anything personal or human connected, it was there. I'm not saying he didn't care about human people, right?
Yeah.
But it was tunnel vision, and it was sports, and that's what made him the person he was. So that's meant as all good stuff. That's meant.
Yeah. No, it really is. And plus, I'm no Larry Lujak anyway, so
Okay, so I found a tape going through some of his stuff the other day, and I found an original Animal Stories CD from Lou Jack and Tommy Edwards, and I'm like, "Hey Ben, let me explain who these guys were to you, or were to him, and explaining it." And we happened to go somewhere, and I was we were in the car, and I popped this thing on. I'm like, "Humor me, let me play this for you." And we're about 5 minutes in. He's like, "This is the worst thing I've ever heard. You've got to be kidding me. This is awful." And I'm laughing because I think it's kind of funny, but he's just looking at me, shaking his head like, "I'm trying, Dad, but this is terrible. Turn it off." So these kids these days, they don't get the early radio humor, I guess, from the 80s. But what are you going to do? What are you going to do?
Hey, man, you're doing your best. You're doing your best. At least you're hey, you're trying. And, as they get older, older things get cool again, retro. Right. I mean, people were into albums again. So hopefully you just keep fighting through. You're a teacher. You're a natural teacher.
I'm struggling.
Man.
Thanks. I'm trying. Every day's a struggle, but I am trying. One of these days, I got the little one. The little one's into sports. So
yes, Mr. Nicholas. Yeah, that's our guy. Yeah. Scott, I always appreciate having you on. I always tell you this, and I like to rehash the story that when I do impersonations, unfortunately, I do have a conscience about it, as in,
Sure.
or conscious about it. Like sometimes, I don't know if I feel bad because I do it and I keep
Sure.
doing it, but you know what I mean? Like I think about,
Yes.
God, I hope their family member, they must hate me. And then I remember you texting the score one day after I had done some grobber bit. And you're like, dude, that's hilarious. I'm Scott Grobstein.
Yeah.
And I wasn't positive it was you, but I was pretty sure.
Right.
And I text back, and then sure enough, you're like, you just green lighted me, and you just kind of look at Les. Obviously, you know him a lot better than all of us do, but you kind of understand and appreciate the character that he was, and some things needed to be pointed out at times.
I do, and first of all, you do it, and it's hilarious. Like I'm literally like crying, laughing, listening to you sometimes. So yeah, you have my full your full blessing. But
I
you
appreciate
do it in
that.
a way, absolutely. I mean, I know what he meant to you and what you mean to him, and I guess I know the respect you guys had for each other, and you do it in a playful way. There has to be the humor. That's what made him who he was. He was a quirky dude. I mean, to say that he was completely normal and everything was to a T, no, but that's what made it fun, and that's what made it quirky, and you bring out the humor in it. And, can some people go a little far with it sometimes? Yeah, but again, I have thick skin. I get it. I know it. There's no personal attacks, and I've heard them all. Trust me, I've heard all the comments in the coffee pot and the other stuff. I've heard it all, man, and it's, it is what it is. But you make it fun, and you just make it enjoyable, and you do it in a loving way. I mean, there's no other way to put it. So yes, I keep on going, man. I love it.
Scott, thanks for coming on, and thanks for being so accessible. I mean, I know that you got to get up and teach tomorrow morning, so you are appreciated. Let's talk soon, all right, man?
Absolutely, buddy. Thanks, man. Keep in touch.
Yeah, you too. That is the great, the one and only Scott Grobstein, Les Grobstein's son. Les Grobstein is the guy that we are honoring tonight. If you don't know, Les Grobstein, longtime legendary radio man in Chicago, and did a lot of years with the Score, doing an overnight show from midnight to 5. That is why I, Mark Grote, am live midnight to 5. And later on, when we have some time, I will talk about why I appreciated Les so much, or actually it's kind of more of an origin story of why Les and I became at the Score what we did. Other than the fact that, we were next to each other in the alphabet, Grobber, Grote. So, I always think about that. Like, if we were in school together, I would have always sat next to Les. like somehow he and I were meant to be. And I appreciate him so much. And that is why I'm, feel blessed that I get to do this show from midnight to 5. Coming up next, we are going to have live Kathy on the show. Kathy is Les's longtime girlfriend, knows him as well, obviously, as anybody. And we'll catch up with Kathy in just a little bit. I'm Mark Grote. This is Chicago Sports Radio 670, The Score.
Bananas. I love them.
Hopefully your building management won't come over again to see what this overnight ruckus is all about. West Loop Tom. Yeah, that's the hope, man. It's a one-off, though. It's the way I feel. I feel strong about this. If that did happen. But last year I was doing an overnight from my place here, living in a high-rise, and got to knock on the door from security to keep it down. And I couldn't do that because I was on the radio. And then he was like, "Oh, okay, that's all right. Okay, that's cool." So, hopefully it won't happen. I think we're cool. I think the neighbor's cool. We're all good. Dave the cat is in the house. He's in a box. Cats love to go in boxes. That's where Dave the cat is right now. We got a lot of stuff coming up here on Score Overnight. And loving on Les. LOL. Loving on Les. Yeah. Jon Greenberg will join us at 1 o'clock. And I cannot wait to talk to Jon because we're doing the Bum of the Year. He's got a poll up on The Athletic right now. At this point, it's on both of our Twitters, Jon Greenberg's and mine. And I'm not going to give it away, where it is right now, but he just sent me the breakdown of where things stand between Tony La Russa, Jerry Reinsdorf, Tom Ricketts, Brett Favre, and Aaron Rodgers. And I can't wait to share that update with Jon. And if you guys want to call in during the 1 o'clock hour to give your entry for Bum of the Week, we certainly would be overjoyed. We would love that. 312-644-6767. Now we get a chance to talk to one of the people closest to Les Grobstein over the last decade plus, his longtime girlfriend, Kathy. And Kathy, thank you so much for coming on Score Overnight. What are you thinking about, and how are you feeling on this day, which is now actually turned into the next day?
Well, it's been interesting. Past year, trying to do things on my own, but I do miss him terribly. A lot of great memories, though, and it seems like sometimes I'm just like talking to him in the car, and it's one of those things. And then I feel like he's answered it. So, but it's been interesting.
Yeah,
the year did go by fast. It did go by fast.
God, didn't it? I mean,
it sure did.
Like when Mitch Rosen said, "Hey, can you do this Les Grobstein show on January 17th or whatever." Boy, today's the 15th, right? 16th. I should know the date. I was like, "Oh yeah, sure, but why?" He's like, "That's the anniversary of his death." I'm like, "Oh my God," and I think that is because people like that, Kathy, for you and for me and lots of people listening, Les was the type of guy who you never really thought would die, because like that he would outlast all of us.
He kept going nonstop.
He just kept going. He was nonstop, right? That's
right.
Like
absolutely.
He must have been a ball, like going out on dates and hanging out with, because he's a lot older than me and you, and the guy had probably more energy than both of us combined, right, Kathy?
Yeah, but very, very little sleep. Very little sleep, and he kept going. Never said no to me.
That's unbelievable. I still try to figure that out, Kathy, and maybe you have the answer. How did that man exist as productively as he did on so little sleep, and did he actually sleep?
Well, he slept, I would say, probably about 3 hours, and then during the time as he was sleeping, if anything was happening with sports or whatever, I would let him know right away when he got up, because I knew I timed it, and it was like 3 hours. It was not enough sleep, but that's how he worked.
Yeah, he was able to function, right?
He was, and he took me to lunch every day and made sure of that, and from 12 to 1, and didn't really sleep well, though.
Oh, man, that's amazing. I didn't know you guys had lunches every day, 12 to 1.
Every day, yeah, Monday through Friday. Well, Saturdays too, though. Yeah.
Was it? Did it go beyond Fuddruckers, or were there other places he'd take you to?
Yeah, like family restaurants.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I bet Les loved like just a good old fashioned Greek restaurant that's a diner type place, right? With like the 7 or 8 pages.
He loved diners. Yes.
Oh, I bet he did.
He took me to a bunch of them, and like even in Florida when we went on a trip, he would always try to find a diner.
Yeah.
That was Les.
Right.
Yeah.
If you were on a trip at either Disney World or Hawaii, right? Wasn't that pretty much his favorite locations?
Right. Yes. Yes.
That's
we
our
were
guy.
planning to go to Hawaii this year, but that didn't happen. But yeah. So he loved Hawaii.
Yeah, no, I know he did. Kathy, is there any like stories or things about Les that stand out, or that you want to or would share with our audience?
I could share some. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
I would love that if you could do that. Thank you.
Yeah. This is interesting. So Les and I went to Tennessee in like 2004.
Okay.
And it was like my very first Bears football game against the Titans.
Uh-huh.
So that year, they did win. It was like 19-17, I believe, in overtime or something. But the funny story was that we had to get me a ticket. So he looked on the street and for someone who had a ticket and was able to get me one. So I didn't realize this, but when we went in, Les went into the press box, and I went to sit at the seat that, the ticket was whatever that number was.
Uh-huh.
I sat down, and all around me was all the Titan fans. And I called Les on his cell phone, and I'm like, seriously, you put me right near all the Titans fans, and I have to root for this, team.
Uh-huh.
And I was kind of like looking at my bag. I'm like, hope it doesn't say anything Chicago on there. I could not stop laughing, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe you put me there.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's hilarious. And, if he had landed in that section, can you imagine that conversations that'd be going on?
Oh my God, he would have everybody talking and either arguing or something about, the team. Yeah. So it was very interesting. But we were able to meet a lot of nice people out there at the time, and who we bought the ticket from, and I'm still talking to him from this day. He's a really nice person, and he loved Les. So,
Yeah.
But anywhere we went, anywhere on travel, even out of the country, somebody would recognize him. And then you get him start talking, and he wouldn't stop.
I know.
He loved it. He loved the attention, and I said, "Go for it." I was right next to him, and I supported him through that whole thing.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. I mean, that's you're a good woman, Kathy. There's no doubt about that.
I stuck by. Yes, but he taught me a lot, and my first time going to spring training in Arizona, it was a lot of fun. I didn't know what to expect or anything, and I asked him. I says, "Hey, do you think you could teach me how to do I think it was the scorecard and how to fill it out?"
Mm-hmm.
So he was trying, but I'm like, you know what? I don't think this is going to work out because I'm not understanding it. The way he was explaining it, and I'm like, I don't think I can do this. But in the meantime, he's in the press box, and I'm walking around and looking for someone to sign a ball or something. Like I had Sammy Sosa sign a ball for me. Now I have an amazing collection of signed autographs, and I'm lucky because of Les. And one day I was sitting, one of the other game day, I don't remember what it was. I was sitting on a chair by myself, and all of a sudden the door opens. Who comes through was Ron Santo. So I was able to get a picture with him.
Sick.
So I went and showed Les that, and he's like, "How did you do that?" I go, "I just sitting there," and there he came out of that door, So it was pretty nice.
That's incredible. Yeah, I mean, Grobber, he had a link to all those Cubs back in the day, man.
He did, yeah. But another interesting story is I was doing a lot of thinking, and when we were first starting to date and stuff, and he went in his trunk, and he was taking out these cassettes. And as we were sitting in the car, he puts it in there, and I'm like, "What is this?" And it was a play-by-play. He wanted me to listen to his voice. And I go, "Oh, you must like hearing your voice." And he just kept putting it in so I can hear it, And all I kept hearing is the excitement of the games that he was doing.
Yeah.
And I thought that was pretty nice.
That's pretty cool. I thought that story was going to go in a different direction, like it was some beat up tape of him doing UIC Flames hockey with some guy named Scrubby McGriffins or something like that. But you know what I love about you, Kathy? You really, like you just said it, you learned a lot from Les, and you appreciated it because you weren't a big sports fan before you met Les, were you?
Not at all. No, not really. No. But he turned me around a little bit and taught me a lot, too. I asked a lot of questions, so he would teach me that, But I always said, how do you know this stuff all by memory? It's amazing.
Right.
It's like an encyclopedia.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, that's probably the most persistent Les text through the years. I mean, there's a lot of persistent texting to Les, and there's a lot of characters in his audience. But the one consistent thing is, you're incredible, Les. How do you remember? My dad says that. My dad, who would listen to the overnights, he gets up into the middle of the night and will put the radio on. He'd be like, how does he know all this stuff?
Right, he did. I mean, it was just amazing. If we ever went somewhere and there was a contest of answering some sports stuff, I would have him help me fill it out to try to win.
Sure.
Yeah,
why? Of course.
Right. He knew all the answer, and it was just really cool. In seconds. I mean, he knew.
Well, here's the thing, Kathy. He knew the answer even if he didn't know the answer. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right. I know what you're saying. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying. Les would always give an answer. But no, I mean, sometimes that's the part that gets lost in Les, and I am responsible for it in part. But Les was a really good broadcaster, and his knowledge of sports was second to none. And that was, we all have to have that base. Nobody gets into sports radio, especially if you're not a diehard. You can't get away with not being pretty well versed in everything and having a natural love for sports, and that's what Les had, probably better than anybody.
Yes. I wanted to because I heard you earlier, regarding that Lady Gaga concert that I had forced him to take me to. I wanted to talk to you about that. He didn't want anybody to know he was going to this. And it's when she first came out, isn't it right, Mark? Wasn't it when she first came out?
Yeah, well, I remember he didn't like her because she's a fraud. Madonna is what it's all about here. So that's hilarious. So then the first person he sees is me and my girlfriend. Ah, great. Grote's here of all people.
Oh my goodness! I'm like, who is that? And he says it's Mark, and I'm like, oh, you know, well, I'm like, I'm sorry that I forced you to take me to this, but it was funny. We didn't even know we were going to bump into someone. So
of course not.
But everybody, everywhere I went, you know, somebody recognized them. So even restaurants and you know things like that. It was nice though. But and I had another story.
Please.
Really quick. Yeah, one time, it was when the Chicago Wolves won the championship. Now, I don't remember how long ago this has been, but I remember they won in overtime. I was looking from where I was sitting, and after the game was over, you know, Les has to get, you know, maybe one of the players, and he was on the ice or something, and he was going so fast walking with his recorder. And I can see him, and I'm like, oh, my God. When he needs to do something, he really runs to it.
Oh, yeah, man.
And, I couldn't believe it. Yeah.
Yeah, I could picture him, too, with that old tape recorder, the classic Les Grobstein tape recorder over his shoulder.
Oh, yeah, he had that with him all the time. Yeah, he kept showing it to me often. So I was like, that's nice. So I kind of know what it really looks like.
Oh, that's hilarious. Was he trying to impress you? Check out my cassette player. You know.
Well, besides doing the play-by-play of his voice, of course.
Yeah, of course. Hey, we in radio, we got to pull out whatever tricks we can possibly come up with. You know what I mean?
Right. I know. I also had an interesting where Les introduced me to. I went to this WLS rewind party. And I got to meet Larry Lujak, Tommy Edwards, Catherine Johns, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And I was I was young at the time. I was in high school, and on the bus, I would always hear their voices talking on the radio. And I got a chance to meet them. And I was like, oh my goodness, wow. I was really lucky. I was happy.
That's very
cool.
cool.
I got to meet them, you know, from the name to the face. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then I asked Les one time, is it possible that you can probably introduce me to Eddie and Jobo one day? Well, he made that happen. He made that happen.
One
I
call.
was like, are you, pardon me?
I said, all you have to do is make one call, probably.
Yes. We were at a game somewhere, and they were there. So I was like, well, thank you for finally letting me meet them. And it was really nice.
That's so cool.
So,
That's awesome. I love all those stories, and the best part about them is they all add up. We all got a pretty good idea of who Les was, and we're fortunate that he put it all out there for us, because most of us don't allow every part of us to be vulnerable,
mm-hmm.
and Les did, didn't he?
Right. Yes. Oh yeah. You know, anytime I'm missing his voice or something, I go to YouTube.
Oh,
and I listen
great.
and I watch and I start smiling wow, yeah. Sometimes I need to hear that, you know.
What a great thing. I didn't really think of it that way. When you know somebody,
I do that from time to time. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's what a way to feel his presence.
That's what I do. Right. I mean, it makes me feel like he's still there. So yeah. And I was going to say to the fans and stuff that reached out to me, and everyone they have been great. And they've been telling me stories, how they used to listen to him, but they miss him a lot. And but I have memories that last me a lifetime. And, you know, I'm really happy about that. I wanted to thank Mitch Rosen for all his support for the last year. And I wanted to add that, too.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you for also having me on tonight.
Yeah, absolutely, Kathy. Thank you for coming on. I mean, it's got to be an emotional day, and I know from talking to you in the past how much he meant to you, and you just reminded us again over the last 20 minutes or so. So, we're going to have Mitch on at 4 o'clock, and I'll make sure that he gets that message. And everybody listening to Score Overnight right now, they're loving on Les on the text line, and they're hearing your voice too. And it means a lot to all of us for you coming on tonight, Kathy. Thank you so much.
I know I have a lot of people listening in tonight, so thank
good.
you.
Good. All right. Well,
22
Kathy.
years, so long time.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, man. That's incredible. Well, you're a strong woman. You're a wonderful woman, and I'm glad that I know you.
I'm glad I know you, too. Thank you so much, Mark.
All right. Bye, Kathy.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Yep. That is Les's long-time girlfriend, Kathy, and you can tell in her voice, you could hear it. I mean, the mix of sadness and happiness, sadness because of this day, but then the happiness because we're talking about him and we're sharing fun stories, and that's what it's all about. And there's some real stuff involved too, but this is the time that we get to remember and have fun and talk about how unique the guy was. And we do have to take a break here. I was going to go into something else, and then I looked up at the clock, and it says 1 o'clock. It is the next hour, and we got to take a break. When we come back, all right, we'll have an update on the Bum of the Year voting that is going on online via The Athletic, via Jon Greenberg, via Mark Grote. You can find it at any of those three places. And Jon Greenberg will join us next here on Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score.
Everybody, you weren't down there, I was.
Les's famous Bum of the Week. We're going to get into Bum of the Year here as well. I am Mark Grote. This is the Les Grobstein. We lost you a year ago yesterday memorial show, and we are working on this Bum of the Year. My next guest, Jon Greenberg, and I started talking, I don't know, like a couple of months back about potentially doing a Bum of the Year. We didn't know exactly how we would do it. Would it be something that Jon would just write or something that I would talk about on the radio? And it turns out that we get a chance to do both, because in The Athletic yesterday, and it's up right now on theathletic.com and Jon Greenberg's Twitter and my Twitter, Bum of the Year candidates. And those are just our suggestions. Tony La Russa, Jerry Reinsdorf, Tom Ricketts, Brett Favre, and Aaron Rodgers are the ones that you can vote on. And you can continue to do it, and we're going to get an update here in a second. But, yeah, you can continue to do it. And if you'd like to call during this segment or any time throughout the overnight to give your vote for Bum of the Year, and it doesn't have to be one of those, please feel free to do that at 312-644-6767. Now, Greenberg, he's my fellow Les Grobstein scholar. What I am to talking about Les, Jon is writing about Les, so we do share that in common. And you know what? You're kind of like you're like my Grobber soulmate, man.
That's the saddest. It's all very sad for everyone. Yes, no. I mean, listen, I think we appreciate the finer things in life and sports media, and we appreciate Grobber. And there's a lot of us out there. Not everyone wants to admit it like us, but there's a lot of Grobber aficionados in the media. One of my favorite stories is I was pulling out of the United Center one night late at night after writing a column. And I'm turning on the Grobber, and I'm like, who is this crazy old guy talking to him? And I'm listening. It's an entertaining conversation, usual classic Grobber caller. And it was Tellender. It was Rick Tellender who had left the game before me, and he was on the phone with him. Our buddy funny. Nick, a younger one, Nick Friedel, who's always up late. Nick is a major Grobber fan.
Oh, nice.
Nick would just, and it wasn't for Nick would just sit and listen. It wasn't, for any laughs or to tell the producers what Grobber said. It was like Nick just liked staying up late and listening to Les.
I did I think some of the best Grobber conversations were, though, with guys like Rick Tellender or David Schuster. Like when Schuster would just jump on after a Cubs game, and they spoke the language, right, Jon?
Oh, yeah. Obviously Schuster liked to give Les a lot of grief. That was part of their relationship.
Sure.
So those calls were fun, but I actually really liked calls where Schuster was in a good mood. Must have been a quick game. And,
right.
And Schuster and him would just, instead of like Schuster needling Les about stuff, they would just talk about like games they've seen and athletes they've seen. And it was kind of like, and Les would relax a little bit. And it was just those two guys, giving people a history of the city. And I think that was one of the reasons why, listen, Les wasn't like, you weren't going to hear a lot of new news from Les. Like, you're not going to have a lot of new opinions on players of today. But that's not what he was there for. You got all the day shows for that, right? Les was there to talk. Les was there to talk about the old days, to give to rip on the Packers, and you could, like, if you're an up and coming sports journalist, like you could have learned a lot by listening to Les about the history of the city and the history of sports.
That's such a great point that people who were maybe like, I don't want to say new to Chicago or new to sports radio, whatever. You're right. Like, he reminded you that there are many, I don't know if significant, but there are many things, significant things that happened in the past, that happened in the 70s and 80s that young fans should probably know about. And if nothing else, they're going to be really interested to know about some of that stuff.
100%. Obviously the one we all go to is the Lee Elia rant. But that's a famous moment, in sports history, not just Chicago history. And, and Les was known obviously for taping that. And, one thing I really appreciate after he passed away, I don't watch PTI was, once my favorite show. I loved it. I don't have a chance to really sit and watch it anymore with, other responsibilities, but I had it on and they started talking about Les, and Tony Kornheiser and Michael Wilbon, two of the most famous sports writers in the country. They did like a full 2 minutes on Les, and mostly it was led by Wilbon, of course, because he's from here. And then Kornheiser made like this really great point about how in every market in the country, there were guys like Les that were like hustling sound, the guys that had their microphone in people's faces and they sold it. And Kornheiser's like, before the internet and 24/7 cable news, he's like, if you wanted to hear quotes from a game, it was a guy like Les giving them to someone on the radio. And I thought that really put Les beyond the overnight show. That put Les in the context of sports journalism. So, listen, like I told people, this is like when our good friend Jeff Dickerson passed away a little before Les, and that was obviously extremely, extremely sad. Something still kind of shakes me up. Mm-hmm. But I told people that, for most of us, if we pass away, we're not going to get these kind of send-offs that, Les and JD did, because they're just, they're special guys, and it was very, very sad to lose them both, kind of back to back like that.
Yeah, it was devastating. You just started to deal with one, and then the other punch comes. So yeah, I'm glad you brought up Jeff Dickerson's name, because I know Les and Jeff knew each other very well and appreciated each other.
I talked with Les about it in the press box, because we had that one Bears game after Jeff passed. We still had to go to, and Les and I were talking about it in the press box that day. And he just was very sad about it. So yeah, it was. I still remember when I checked my phone in the morning and someone's like, "Hey, can you come on to talk about Les?" And I'm like, "What?"
Oh wow!
And I had to immediately scroll through through Twitter. Yeah.
Oh man! So that's how you find out. Yeah. It was just. I would say Les's death was surprising and unsurprising. It's it's surprising because none of us said, I didn't know he was sick and all that, but then he led this lifestyle, that was just crazy.
And he had a full, and unlike JD, who passed away with this young son and after losing his wife, Les lived. I know 69 is too young, but Les lived a full life. He saw a lot of things. He really accomplished his goals of being, a big sports guy in town. And, so you kind of celebrate that a little more.
Absolutely. And before we get to the main event here, with Jon Greenberg from The Athletic. I'm Mark Grote. We're celebrating Les Grobstein. The main event is the bum of the year, which we'll talk about here. But really quickly, because I'm going to forget, and I had a couple people wondering the same thing, and I don't have the exact answer to it. What is your history with Les? I mean, you mentioned that you just turned him on one day, or like how long do you go back with Les as in a relationship?
Well, I think it was just that, moving here and I started working in Chicago in 2003. And he wasn't on the radio then. I think he was still doing his all his little side gigs at that point. So he was just like that character, character you see in the press box every day in the clubhouse. Yes. And and then I remember I read the Chicago Reader story. Because people talk about the stories I wrote, but there's a story written in the Chicago Reader. And I know the guy's name, and I can't think of it right now because he's a famous journalist. But he wrote this great long feature on Les, and this was when he had the first overnight show, that before he lost that and then was kind of in the wilderness for a little bit.
Yep.
So it was the first overnight show, and it was kind of the history of Les, and that's kind of when I wrote a story. I based that off that story. So that made me interested in him more than just like this, goofball in the press box in the clubhouse with his old microphone, reading that story, like really kind of humanized him.
Yes.
And then, then I would start listening to him on the overnights. Once he started doing the overnights again, when Mitch went to the Score, and Mitch hired him, I forget what year it was, to start doing overnights again. And when I would cover a game, that's when I listened to the radios when I'm in the car. So
sure.
When I covered the games, I would would turn them on afterwards. I was always so happy about it because it was such a goofy, fun show that he wasn't trying to be ironic about it. There's no irony in the show.
No, there was never a tiny drop of irony, not from Les.
And I loved it because the callers would have to let Les go. It's like, all right, Les, I gotta leave. He's trying to kill all this time.
I gotta let you go.
So,
okay, one more question for you, Bob, and then I'll let you go. Who's your top 10 favorite Cubs of all time? Go.
And then, with The Athletic, I was trying to do more sports media features, so I asked him if I could do the show one day. And, come in and interview him. I think I interviewed him before. Yeah, and I sat in till I was there till 3:30. I was leaving when Hanley was coming back. And they were just like, he was like, what are you doing here?
Oh, my
God. So, I wrote this, and he was so excited for the stories, calling me, when's this coming out? When are you almost done? I want to post it on Grobber.net or whatever.
Yeah, Grobber.net. Get it right.
Grobber.net. Right. So, and it was great, and people loved it. And that's the thing. Like, when I published it, everyone was so excited about it because, it just showed. And I think his family, I remember his sister I talked to, was like, I don't want to say she was surprised, but I think pleasantly surprised that, how much reaction a lot of this got, because I think, everyone looks at him as just this character. But, to see how famous he really was. And like I said, go to, he's on PTI. They give him 2 minutes. They don't do that for everyone that passes away.
Yeah. No, he touched a lot of people, man. And I'm glad that people are interested in keeping his spirit alive. And that's pretty obvious. I haven't even gotten to the text line, but it is overheating with stuff about Les and appreciating the Score overnight and not hearing a national talk show right now. So,
oh my God, I hate when I hate the national stuff. I'm sorry.
I know.
Listen, some people can do it, but you can't do this job. You're a normal person. It's like it's either got to be for producers on their way up that are just going to split it.
Yep.
But even then, it would never have the character it would with. There's no way to replace Les.
No, there isn't.
It's just impossible. So someone who can actually do the show from a technical standpoint and be just like a ridiculous person.
Remind me, we got to do the bum of the year stuff right now. But remind me to ask you the question, and if I forget, then I'll bring it up later anyway. But just keep this in the back of your head. Would Les have liked Justin Fields? Just keep that in the back of your mind.
Good one.
I have an idea of that, so we'll discuss that here too. I want to run that past you, but. Bum of the year is going down to, I know we got a bunch of people on hold right now too at 312-644-6767. And John, why don't you give the candidates that we came up with and where things, if you can, tell us where
Sure.
things stand right now on the online poll, which is still, I assume, is still going right now, correct?
Yes, I know
Okay.
on my computer in front of me, it's still going. Last I checked, just before I got on the call, it was just under 2,000 votes, and
Okay.
I had sent you a screenshot.
Yes.
And it's there's not too many more votes since I sent that to you because that was
Okay.
around midnight.
Okay.
But Tony La Russa is the clear leader.
Okay.
I mean, he's been the clear leader since started off early with Favre was number one, but then La Russa, once people started noticing it, and especially White Sox Twitter type people.
Oh,
So
yeah.
La Russa's the clear leader with probably like 33%, I would say right now.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
it's Jerry Reinsdorf
Okay.
is number two.
Okay.
And then it goes to Brett Favre, number three.
Okay.
Tom Ricketts 4, and then Aaron Rodgers 5. I thought Rodgers would do better.
Wow. Yeah.
You know, I thought he would
yeah,
do
and-
better. It's like you said, maybe it's too topical. He's too new. But like,
he's too new.
I
for
listen. When
Rodgers.
you and I first came up with the candidates, La
Uh-huh.
Russa was the first guy we both said.
Oh, right.
And,
But-
and when I brought it up to other people, they said La Russa first as well.
I'm a little bit conflicted on La Russa, though, because there is a distinct possibility. I don't remember if I shared this with you at Alice Hall. There's a distinct possibility that Les would have liked La Russa a lot and would have sort of looked past all of his errors because Les had a thing for the 80s and probably had a
Right.
relationship with Tony La Russa, probably would have loved the hire. I know he's a good guy, and I know a lot of people don't like him, but that doesn't matter. I know him, and I like him, and he's a good guy. I don't care what people say. Like, I mean, some of the
Or was
stuff-
La Russa mean to Les once in like 1983 and he's hated him ever since?
Oh yeah, that if he got the if he's got the wait a minute, I've been told by Sean Sears we've got that audio. What audio are you speaking of, Mr. Sears?
You're talking about the Tony La Russa Dave Stewart thing, right?
Oh no, but we could definitely play that if you'd like. This is have you ever heard Greenberg Les doing the Dave Stewart impersonation? And
No.
the Dave Stewart. Oh my goodness, my friend. Yes. Sean, go ahead and play that for Mr. Greenberg.
After the game, we go into Tony La Russa's his office. I asked the first question. I said, "How is he?" He says, "Rather terse. I don't know." And the late Bob Glass said, "Boy, it must have been pretty scary to," and he didn't even get any more words out of it. And all of a sudden, La Russa screaming, "I don't want to talk about that bull bleep." And then Bob Glass responded with, "Okay, but don't yell at me." And La Russa goes, "I'll bleeping yell at you if I bleeping want to." And Bob Glass says, "Well, then I'll yell back." And then La Russa says, "Well, then that's the end of the interview. You're acting like a newborn that's just been born or whatever." And I guess a newborn was just born, right? Bob Glass, he didn't back down. He says, "Don't be that way. Be a man." And La Russa starts screaming again, "Be a man. The bleep, bleep, bleep guy is on the ground, blah, blah, blah." And it was unbelievable. And that's when Dave Stewart, with his high-pitched voice, starts screaming, "What are you talking about being a man, you bleep, bleeper?" And then about a minute later, he goes over to Glass and says, "Don't you ever bring your ass in here again." The next day, Glass was supposed to be off. He was supposed to be off the next day. The late Joe Muschel, who was in charge of the AP, he says, "You better get out there. You can't not be there the next day." So Glass went up to La Russa to try to soothe things over. And La Russa says, "I don't want to talk to you. I don't even want to see you. You basically questioned my manlyhood." And this was a day later. And a couple of other people were trying to ask La Russa, "How can you think that he did that on purpose when it forced in the go-ahead run?" And he says, "You ask me that question again, we're going to go at it right here." I mean, come on now. Give me a break.
Don't you ever bring your ass back in here.
Oh, John, there are so
great.
many angles to, and I am now convinced now after listening to the tape. We listened to the tape. I don't think Les would have been a fan of Tony La Russa.
Well, he was. There must be sound. He was on the air still when La Russa got hired.
It's true. We could probably do some digging and find out.
I guarantee. Yeah, I bet he because he's filling time. He probably just made both sides of the argument just to fill a show.
That's definitely what happened. Yes.
Yeah, right. So listen. He would have hated this year, though. I mean, can you imagine him on the air after when La Russa, with with the intentional walk, he would have went nuts about that.
Oh my God! Oh yeah, some of that would have kept him going all night too. But yeah,
Unbelievable.
I'm a little surprised that. What do you say? Ricketts was in 4th on the list.
Yeah. I mean, I guess Ricketts, it wasn't like the worst year. It was just people have just been mad at him for the past few years.
Yeah. I guess you don't necessarily identify immediate anger with Ricketts, or maybe not from Grobber's perspective. But
no, I mean, I don't think he would have liked what he said. Like, that Ricketts still won't get over the Sammy stuff. I feel like that would have bothered him.
Yeah, I think you're right. That would have bothered him.
The Favre thing, he would have went nuts about. Brett Fraud, I mean, he would have went nuts about the Favre welfare stuff.
Oh my God, this guy, he's a fraud and he's a phony, and I told you he's a bad guy. And any of you people from Milwaukee, if you want to call and say anything else, I'll hang up on you. That's what he would have said.
Oh, hell yeah.
All right, dude, let's take some calls. You ready for some calls, brother?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
We start with Ron on the south side. Ron, you're on Bum of the Week on the Scorer Overnight Grobber Show with Mark Grote and Jon Greenberg.
Hey, guys, look here. Brett Favre, hands down.
Oh, yeah.
The beauty of Les, he could take you back to any game. I would call him and say, Les, what about that White Sox game, the chili hot dog game, 72, and he set it up for it.
Yeah.
Sparky Lyle and Dick Allen came in, but any game that you thought he took, it's like going back watching a movie, and it was like he just described it from the day before. But guys, I have to give my special comment about Les. Les knew I was a big Sox fan, so 2000 Kimberly, he said, "Hey Ron, Milwaukee, they opened up a new ballpark." He said, "Why don't you be my guest and we'll go up to the Sox game?" Now, at that time, guys, I was coaching my son in Little League, and I always took him to baseball. I said, Les, is it possible that you can get a ticket for my son? He said, yeah. But Grote, you mentioned it earlier, intimacy. I have been listening to him all night. So he said, Ron, we're going to meet at a certain location. He said, and I'm going to drive them. Guys, I had never met him. And when I got in the car with him, it was like I had been knowing him my entire life. So I waited to say this because I feel very special that Les invited me to a game, and I had a chance. So you can imagine, I'm in the car with Les. It's talking about everything, guys, not just sports. But I love Les. And again, guys, when I say, well, Les, I'd like to bring my son. My son turned 30 yesterday, and he still remembers that. He was we went to the game and had a wonderful time. So that will always stick with me, guys. So thanks for letting me make that comment, but simply the best.
Thanks, Ron. Who'd you vote for Bum of the Year?
Favre.
Oh, it was Favre. That's right. I got you.
That was a great call, man. What a great call. Thanks, Ron.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. What'd you think of that, man?
Oh, it's so sweet. What like a nice. I just can't imagine. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's just such a nice little story. There's not much to say about it. It's just great.
Yeah. Well, I love too when he said, Les, like with the detail and like he was just like he was there, like because that was Les. It'd be like he wouldn't just give you who was up. It'd be like
I know, right?
Rudy Law's on deck right now, and Dick McGregor was in the hole, or some other name that sounded made up.
Right. And the thing about Les is if he didn't remember the game you're talking about, he might just make up something about it.
100%. 100%. Absolutely. Oh yeah, I remember that, and then quickly get on to something else. Let's go to Tom, my guy Tom, longtime Grobber listener, Tom in Algonquin. What's up, buddy?
Oh, thank you so much for the show tonight.
Sure, Tom.
Mark and Cheryl.
Cheryl.
She's here this time. I got my.
Okay. So Cheryl, is she your girlfriend or is she your wife?
She's in the house.
She's in the house.
She's my girl, just like Kathy was.
Yeah.
Wes, I just want to say this.
Yes.
First time I heard from Kathy. I know Mark did the ceremony at Les's passing, and maybe I missed it, but I never heard Kathy speak. Maybe she had to take a deep breath and get away. But hearing her tonight, thank you so much for that. She was so lovely. She was so lovely.
She really was. Do you have a bum of the year candidate that you'd like?
Yeah.
Who would less? Yeah, who?
Roquan Smith.
Oh, okay.
Wow. All right.
Why Roquan, man?
Roquan, he disrupted the entire season from mini camps to stuff that people maybe don't think is important. And I don't know, I didn't really hear Wani talk about it that much, but
Right.
I know Wani was big on mini camps. But he disrupted. They said they didn't call him a holdout, they call him a hold in because he did attend stuff. But that was only so he wouldn't lose money. He didn't have an agent. And we should have probably cut bait with him before the season started. But anyway, it's sad and then you got a guy like David Montgomery, same exact years, same exact service time, has a pretty big offense and a pretty big impact on the offensive side of the ball. Roquan had an impact on the defensive side of the ball.
Yes, sir.
But
Yes, sir.
that being said, it's 11 on 11, and the line of scrimmage has a lot to do with it, and a leadership, and a locker room, and all that stuff. And I'm sorry. Justin Fields, David Montgomery, well, Justin, he's so much better than anybody even wants to admit.
Oh, okay. Good for you, Tom. I wasn't sure what side you were going to land on with that. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate the call. We got you down for Roquan Smith. Why not, huh, Greenberg?
I mean, I can understand why fans would be upset with him. I can't put Roquan on there, but that's like a perfect thing for fans to get upset about, right? Like skipping the minicamp, you become a distraction. We're all talking about when's he going to start practicing. That's the stuff, kind of a hardcore sports fan that's, it gets annoyed by. So, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't vote Roquan, but I can understand it.
That's the essence. It absolutely is. All right, then that brings me to the question that I teased earlier, and the question was, would Les have liked Justin Fields? You want me to give my answer first, or you think he would? Okay, go ahead.
I think he would, and I think he would have talked about Bobby Douglas a lot.
Yes. Yes.
I think he would have liked him. What do you think?
I think he would have used Bobby Douglas as an example. I think he would have been like, I think he would have liked Justin Fields, but I believe he would have protected the heritage guys like Bobby Douglas and Vince Evans. You're like, well, people say they've never seen a guy run like this. Well, I saw Bobby Douglas play, and a lot of people don't even remember Vince Evans. He could run and throw the ball farther than anybody. So I think he would have taken a little bit of exception to everybody saying he's the greatest, most spectacular. And then he probably would have got into Gale Sayers could, I just think he would have protected the history again.
And he would have talked about every pass Walter Payton threw.
Yeah. Yes. The legacy would have been protected. I love it. Yeah, so that's where I stand on that. All right. Any other updates here on the bum of the year candidates here?
No, I haven't looked at the vote, but I can't imagine since the last time I went to my computer anything's changed. I think
probably not.
It was pretty, at this time of night. I think we're pretty much set that the people on our vote have said Tony La Russa.
Okay.
And then Reinsdorf for empowering Tony La Russa, I would assume, and then Favre, and then Tom Ricketts. And then we'll go with Aaron Rodgers. Now watch. What's his name? The punter guy is going to catch wind that we were being mean to Aaron Rodgers, and he's probably going to ask him questions about it.
Oh, yeah. That'd be awesome, man.
Back.
Yeah, if we
he's always on high alert if people are being mean to Aaron Rodgers because some people, that's his big ticket. So no, I'm kidding. But I think it's La Russa. I mean, and you feel a little bad because he did have health problems at the end of the season. But I mean, it was such a disastrous season. It would have been perfect for Les. And I thought about that at times. Man, Les would have loved this controversy. It felt like every Sox game there's something with him for a while.
Yeah, that he would have had sound effects and all sorts of things for La Russa. Would have been like the Grobber dunk tank. It would have been great.
Oh, 100%. And there's not a lot of we were thinking about it the athletes. There wasn't a ton this year of bad. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to say Roquan, but there's no one on the Bears really.
Yeah,
Sox. You maybe say Grandal. Could have been a candidate. He's so bad.
Yeah. And then, I don't know, Bulls, I mean, all, as disappointing as they have been, I don't know that there's anybody on that team that stands out as, God, this guy's a bum. I mean, maybe Levine. Maybe Levine would have gotten some of that probably.
I think Zach probably would have got some because people are just annoyed with him right now. And it's just, when you get that big deal, he's never going to live up to it. And he wasn't great at the end of last season because he was playing through that knee injury that got operated on. You think it's tough to say something about a guy who's been injured, but I wonder if Lonzo Ball would have got some.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. I bet he would
have.
Played in a year. I bet he would have because people are sick of hearing his name. They're sick of hearing that he had this. I mean, have you noticed, by the way, that his effect on this team becomes a little bit more powerful every time you hear one of the analysts or anybody that talks Bulls talks about it? My God, Lonzo Ball really had this much of an effect on that team?
Yeah, right? I know. And it's and his every injury update's so depressing. It was well, I'm having trouble walking up steps.
Yeah.
Or they're like Lonzo's thinking about running soon.
Right,
he's close.
About it. And
he's
close.
Close.
It's always the caveat's always, but not cleared. Not cleared to walk. He's been cleared for brisk walking, but it's just been horrible updates.
Right, it's wow, he's really working on crossing the street.
Unassisted.
right. We're not sure he's got the quick twitch muscles yet to make it across a busy intersection. It's just sad. And I feel bad because we had one call we had a Zoom with them, a couple Zooms with them. I think beginning of the season and maybe end of last year, and we were all the reporters were just man, that was depressing. That was we weren't making fun of him. We were just man, I feel bad for this kid. He's saying he seems really down.
Right.
So yeah, I mean that would have got. I'm trying to think who else, if anyone. But like we said, no one on the Cubs. No one cares.
Yeah, nobody cared about the Cubs. Yeah, I think you're fair with the White Sox candidates. I mean, there has to be somebody beyond Tony La Russa that's responsible for the breakdown of that team. So,
I mean, you know what? He might have gave a little more to the GMs, to Jed Hoyer and Rick Hahn.
Yeah.
They could have got some crossfire from the Grobber.
That's
right. Yeah, I don't know who else would have really got hammered by. I mean, no one. Someone said, and I put this in the story. We didn't put it as a candidate, but the Blackhawks execs for
I was just going to say
on from the broadcasters.
So maybe,
just for that, because I'm sure he's very, very protective of them.
Oh my God, dude! I didn't even think about the Eddie Olczyk angle. He would have killed them, just 100% based on Eddie Olczyk. Oh yeah, good call.
And Foley, I mean, he's probably a huge Foley guy. I would assume.
Absolutely. Yeah, I assume he is.
Yeah, so they could have got to. And then, although we know it's a little more complicated than just Foley didn't want to do all the games anymore. They knew they were going to have to move on. Yeah. And Eddie's Eddie. I know there's some issues with Eddie, and they should have done everything they could to keep him. Is basically the bottom line of that. Eddie was funny though, because I remember after it was all done, he was he was on the radio with someone. He's I'm not going to do a lot of media on this. It's the first I've talked about it. And then he did 9 straight interviews for the rest of the day.
Anybody Eddie's saying to listen.
Right. And he's I'm not going to do a lot of media. He's yeah, right. He's on every show. He's on B96.
Oh man, that's hilarious.
He actually called up Kathy. He actually called up Eric and Kathy separately and just talked to them.
at the score 30th. That's funny because he was on with Mully and Haugh that day, and he was spilling. And then afterwards, my parents were there. He came up to my parents' table and is telling everything. I'm talking all about it. So it was, I'm glad. I hope he felt better. I'm glad he got his side of it out, you know?
Yes, I'm glad he did too. And Les would have been furious. I mean, just furious the way that went down. Yeah. You know, those are his people. So, he would not have been happy about a lot. This would have been 2022 is a terrible sports year in Chicago, and Les would have. It would have been a good year for Les to event.
Oh yeah, he would have been crucial to the overnight. Let's take. I know, I'm well past. I probably should have let you go to bed by now, but let's take one more bum of the year call, and then we'll spring you. It's Tracy on the South Side. Tracy, what's going on? It's Mark Grote and Jon Greenberg. How are you?
I'm doing good. My bum of the week is Tony La Russa, and the story that I want to tell you guys is about Les. And I called in, and I had you about 7 years old, and it was a Walter Payton story. And I asked him, what year did Walter Payton run for 275 yards? He told me. He told me what year. He told me what team. He told me what quarterback. What defense? Who's on the defensive line?
Gave you everything you needed.
He ran down the whole story. So all I asked, I said, Les, I got a question for you. What year was it? He said 1977, and they did it against the Minnesota Vikings.
That's awesome.
You probably got more than you bargained for, didn't you?
I got the best story. Just add us to that one question out of Les. And another thing that me and Les used to talk about was Pete Rose. He wanted him in the Hall of Fame, and I didn't.
Oh, okay.
And that was another.
That had to be a hardcore clash, I'm sure. Tracy, who is your bum of the year?
Tony La Russa.
Oh, you said it. My producer just asked me to ask you that question, so I blame him for not listening.
I'm sorry, that's on me.
I heard it.
I heard
it.
Okay, John was listening. Thank you so much for the call. I appreciate it, Tracy.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks, Tracy.
Greenberg, I guess we had it right with La Russa because people are hot for La Russa.
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, we're you and I were we have our fingers on the pulse of what Grobber and his fans would want. So, absolutely.
Right. We keep his spirit alive.
Bad. It really and in truth, that La Russa disaster this season really personified 2022 in Chicago sports. Just
is that really a question?
Yeah.
Just a bad year. So, I think it's pretty fitting.
Could you imagine how relieved the beat writers were with this one, because they the beat writers started to come under fire. I felt because they weren't asking they weren't being angry enough for La Russa, I guess. So I think they're pretty relieved, probably.
Yeah, and they had to deal with Tony, and his moods, and not answering questions, and sometimes it was good for them though because it was a story. It wasn't a good story, but it was Tony was the one guy. The post-game press conference has kind of gone away, not away, but it's not as important as it used to be, especially when you have bad teams.
True.
And Tony made the post-game press conference mandatory again with the manager.
Yeah, he did.
Because you didn't know what the hell he was going to say when something went wrong. He could blame anything. He could go off on a tangent, and then that becomes the story for the next day. And especially like you said, then people are complaining that he's not getting enough questions because it's gotten so late at night that people just the stories have to be filed before then. There's just not a lot of necessity to being at the post game all the time. But it became something even I had to go to as a columnist. Columnist, we like to leave early. So Pedro Grafal, I'm not. I don't think is going to have the same mandatory presence.
No, I don't think so. Talk about the most nondescript hire in Chicago managerial history. People forget. I had a White Sox fan friend of mine I was out with for dinner last week, and he actually forgot his name. He's whatever his name is, Pedro what? Because after the wave of getting to know him during his press conference, it's now I don't feel like I know anything about Pedro Grafal.
But you have to listen to Shane's his Bourbon and a Buddy interview that he was touting today.
That's right.
But
right.
You know what's funny is I teach a class at DePaul, and I gave a quiz on Chicago sports the other day, and no one got Grafal. I said, who's the White Sox manager? Literally one of the questions. And one guy, I said to him, I go, you told me you're a Sox fan. He goes, yeah, but I'm not that big of a fan.
Right. Yeah. No, like he's going to have to really make himself stand up. But you're right, man. I mean, for sure, La Russa was the first, much-watched post-game press conferences since Ozzie, and haven't been a lot of those. Well, I guess for winning there has been on the north side, but not quite the characters. Dude, I got to go. Sean is going to kill me if I don't take the break right now, but thank you for appreciating Les the way you do, and I know how you appreciate him. You know he's a character, but you're one of the people that, respects him to the core as well.
Absolutely. We need more characters in this world, so.
We do.
Any of you budding characters out there, keep it going.
Yeah, call this show, as a matter of fact.
Right. All right, thanks, Grote.
All right, man. I'll talk to you later. That is Jon Greenberg from The Athletic. You should read his columns over there, theathletic.com. I subscribe. You should, too. And you could check out what we were just talking about, the Bum of the Year candidates, La Russa, Reinsdorf, Ricketts, Brett Favre, and Aaron Rodgers. If you would like to vote online, you can go to Jon Greenberg's Twitter, my Twitter. John is at John_Greenberg. I am at Mark Grote Sports, and theathletic.com if you want to find it there as well. We're just getting cooking here on Score Overnight as we continue to memorialize the great Les Grobstein. And coming up next is another guy who was a huge fan of Les and I think local sports radio in general. He is Mark Potash, the Bears writer for the Sun-Times. I'll sneak in some Bears as well. Coming up next on Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score.
Bananas. I love them.
My association with Les Grobstein began as a listener. I'm 51, so just to give you the age range that you're dealing with when I'm talking to you, so you just know what ages I was when I was watching certain things. And I was a huge Cubs fan as a kid. Essentially my sports consciousness was late 70s and then the 80s. So you had. And I was a massive Cubs fan, and you had the Cubs having that unbelievably magical 1984 season when they won the division for the first time in 39 years, when it was a huge deal to win your division. And it was a big deal, and it was a big deal for the losers that were the Cubs up until 1984. So I was kind of like, that was my sports obsession. Like that, I loved the Cubs, man. And everything about it, and I knew all that stuff, like all that minutia. Like I think about all those guys, like when I was a kid, like Steve Ontiveros and Ivan DeJesus and Mike Tyson, the second baseman, Larry Bittner and Bobby Mercer and Jerry Martin and Mike Vail. And I pull those names off the top of my head, man. Like I am not looking down at anything when I talk about names like Thad Bosley. You know what I'm saying? Like the greatest pinch hitter I've ever seen in my life. So I kind of had that thing, not to the Grobber level, but to listen to somebody who, oh man, this guy loves talking about those 80s Cubs, man. like just as a listener, whether I was in, probably in high school, listening to Les, whether it was on LS or on the Score, and like, oh man, this guy kind of speaks my language. Yeah, I want to know more about Steve Ontiveros' mustache and how Ivan DeJesus could throw the ball, but he couldn't hit a lick. So like that attracted me to Les as a radio product and a radio personality. And then all the personality, that was hilarious. I like, like Greenberg. I think he and I have another thing in common. I love characters. I'm not just talking about on the radio, in life. I try to surround myself with characters. You should see some of my friends. They're characters. And so Les embodies all of that. I love characters, and I love guys who take sports that seriously, which I know might sound ironic coming from me because sometimes I've had the reputation of, going for the fun and the funny as opposed to the substance and things like that. But, man, I love the substance when it comes to Les Grobstein and getting into the minutia and tracking all that. So So I just honestly liked the cut, and I knew he could be a goof. I knew all that kind of stuff, but at the core of it, I just liked the guy. I liked him as a person, as a friend, as he came to be, and as somebody who was listening to him. Because he was such a character, you often separated it. You'd listen to Les like he's just this entity, as opposed to your friend or whatever the case, or whatever your relationship was. When he was on the air, it was Les damn Grobstein, the character and the insider that we all know and love. And so when I was eventually, fast forwarding through a lot of stuff, when I started working back full time at the Score, which was in 2010, I'd been working for WBBM radio for a lot of years as a reporter and anchor, all that stuff. And so I started doing what was then the Mully and Hanley shows. The first time, the show was put together, they brought me in because they wanted to have, they wanted somebody who could banter with the hosts and do a good update, which I did. And I ended up having a blast working with Mully and Hanley and Mully and Haugh, just being part of that show. But one of the things that I would do when I would come in, get in there usually about 4:00 to prep for the show, 4 in the morning, and there'd be Les doing a show, which I probably listened to walking in, and I don't even remember if Les asked me to come on or if I just opened the mic and started talking because I wanted to be part of the Mike Vale conversation. I don't remember what the case was, but I opened that mic up. I think it was probably a little bit after 4, and we just talked for the next hour. And then it was so funny and so successful and so exactly what you would think listening to Les and I. No, if you know us, listening to us was kind of hilarious. It kind of was. And then we just started doing it every day. And every day I would make sure we made it a little more reasonable. I would jump on with him more like 4:20, 4:30. I wasn't going to do a full hour with him and hijack his show, even though I think he would have loved it if I had done 2 hours with him. But I come on.
No doubt about that.
Every day, and we had every moment that you could possibly have in terms of we laughed a lot. I pissed him off a few times. I don't know if Les ever. I don't think Les ever pissed me off. I don't think he ever did. I disagreed to the point of maybe anger towards him. That good old fashioned sports anger that we're all entitled to as sports
hell yeah.
fans. Yeah, exactly. But that took our relationship off the air and on the air to a different level, just because we had a thing going on and we both knew it. And here were the rough ones, though. The rough ones were when I would host an evening show at the Score, and Les would come on after the show that I would host, maybe that was done at midnight, and we've had all sorts of different manifestations of evening times and shows and things like that. But Les would be coming in next, and he'd say, "Hey, you mind sticking around for a segment?" And then what would happen. 2 hours later, I'd be walking my ass home. So it was always worth it because it was fun, man. It was just because it could go in any direction. We had a good chemistry. We both have distinct personalities. We both have distinct opinions. Les probably more so than I. He's the host. So, it was kind of our relationship is kind of it was sort of meant to be, actually. If you go back to, my high school days and knowing him then or listening to him then it does make sense that I caught up with Les, as in, I don't mean career-wise, I mean just caught up with him in life, and we became friends and had a lot of fun on the radio. So yeah, that's my relationship with him. Coming up next, we will bring in Mark Potash, another friend of Grobber's. Mark Potash, yeah, Potsy covers the Bears for the Chicago Sun-Times, so we'll talk a little Bears with him too, but mostly I like talking a little bit of shop with Potsy, Les and local radio and what it means to him, because we've had some good talks about that in the past. And oh yeah, Potsy and I can talk 80s DePaul and things like that. That's another thing Man, I left that part out with Grobber. Not just the Cubs thing, man. I was like a crazy DePaul fan. Like young Mark Grote was a crazy Dallas Comegys, Tyrone Corbin, Skip Dillard, Clyde Bradshaw, all those guys. And Les spoke the language. So it was meant to be. Got to take a break. It's Score Overnight on Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score.
Everybody, you weren't down there, I was.
Like with Les, sometimes it would just get real with him. Like there was no pushing him off. Look, we all play a little radio from time to time, but sometimes Les would get locked in when he, let's just call it an episode. Les would have an episode that he would be so angry, as you just heard him there with, I believe, Adam Harris, one of his old overnight producers. In fact, I'm positive. I know him. That was Adam Harris that you heard in the background. So it truly is incredible when he has those episodes, and there's just no pushing him off of that position. All right, as we welcome you back into the Les Grobstein Memorial Show, a year ago yesterday, Les died. We lost Les, and so we're fortunate enough to be able to do a Les tribute show until 5 o'clock this morning. We've had a lot of fun. You can check it out on the Odyssey app if you missed any of the hours and you'd like to go back, Odyssey.com. And who do we have? Well, we had Scott Grobstein on. We had Kathy, his girlfriend, longtime girlfriend. Jon Greenberg was just on from The Athletic. And now that brings us to my guy Mark Potash with the Chicago Sun-Times, writes for the Bears. And certainly, Potsy, you appreciated a guy like Les Grobstein. I know that.
Oh, absolutely, Mark. And thanks for doing this show. I think it's great. We need more overnights. That's
Amen,
a subtle hint. But yeah, it's it's hard to believe it's been a year, and I got to tell you, I feel the same sense of emptiness and loss now because, I think I might have told you this last year when we talked. Is just kind of took Les for granted, and he was the kind of guy you just always thought he would be there, and now that he's not, I feel his loss all the time. And I have to admit, it was another thing that it was interesting from my perspective is that as I get older, I just didn't listen as much to Les as much because you're just older, you're tired. I sleep more. I don't.
Sure.
I can't go without sleep like I used to. So I feel regret in that respect too, and that it's happened a lot in our business to people who in our business we know people, we work with people all the time. We see them at games and stuff like that, and yet you really don't take the time to really spend. There's certain people that are kind of on the fringes a little bit. Chet, we lost Chet. Les. I know John talked about JD, yep. and John Mullen. We lost him too. So every time this happens, I say, "Wow, I've really got to I really have to strengthen some of the relationships I have." So I kind of feel regret there because as much as I feel like I knew Les really well, I don't feel like I got to appreciate him until he was gone, and that's kind of tough. So. But I don't want to bring you down. I know this really should be a celebration, but that's just how I feel emotionally about it. But it's always, I tell you, it's always great just listening to the show, listening to John. So just listening to the stories. Les just, even when he's not here, he still just has an uplifting presence on the score just in general. So, and even when it's funny, he always makes you smile. Like one of the things with the Bears this year is Matt Eberflus's defense is the key position is the three technique. Every time I hear the three technique, I think of Les and I laugh. I mean, yes, it's just so. I mean, almost like every day, you get a constant reminder of how much fun it was to have Les around. But like I said, also a little melancholy because, like I said, he was one of those guys you thought would always be there, and now he's not, and that's that's kind of difficult.
Yeah, and it's a good lesson, man, too. Like what you were saying about how. You wish you were maybe closer with some of the guys that we lost, or like there's people in our lives who we're friends with at work or whatever the case may be, and we definitely look at we identify a person as, you know what, that's somebody I'd really like to hang out with. And then you just never do it just because, especially as you said, as we get older and there are things that we need to be beholden to other than socializing. But I think that, like, that happens to me. Like, I'm thinking about that right now. There's a lot of people that I'm like, God, I want to hang out with that person, and then never do, and then we lose them, and then there's that regret. I think that that's what you were feeling, and I think that that's something that I can relate to, man.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, a lesson for younger people. I am 63, and so as I get older, I'm finding that more and more. That feeling those pangs of regret when anybody, people I know, whether in the business or out, who pass away. And so, the lesson is, well, when you're younger, take advantage of whatever opportunities you have. And it's hard to do. It is hard to do in this day and age, especially as you get older and you have families and stuff like that. And we're all so busy. I mean, this year, not to go too far off track, this bear season just kind of flew by for me. I mean, it's just amazing how, like, when you work in especially a seasonal type situation where you're working every day for like 6 months, man, it goes by in a hurry. So life goes by quickly, and it's really hard. When you mentioned that, I'm thinking of people. Well, I really need to get into. I could spend like a week just kind of reconnecting with people that I really feel like I need to. So again, but that's, I guess that's just a part of life. But Les was a big part of that. So it's tough to not have him, especially with such you talk about a unique personality and also a unique show. Literally, his shoes can't be filled.
It's so true, man. And I was thinking too. I'm listening to the promo coming in where Les is admonishing those that would dare think that McMahon is better than Cutler or vice versa. And then I'm thinking to myself, well, you know what? Now that we've had a little time that's passed and we're not in the midst of the Cutler rush, who was a better quarterback? Was Les? Does Les get more points now? Like, I'm sure Cutler was a better pure quarterback than Jim McMahon, but when you put everything together, aren't there a few more points in favor of McMahon now that we've cooled from the Cutler era?
Yeah, Mark, I was rolling my eyes as I heard that conversation, that intro, because those are polar opposites of what I'm looking for in a quarterback. Jay Cutler was the kind of guy who will totally tease you, totally fool you. He'll make some great plays, and you'll think he's good, but you'll think he's much better than he is, but he's not. But he's just doesn't have the it factor, or whatever you want to call it, that a guy like Jim McMahon did. Jim McMahon lifted every single guy on that team the moment he stepped on the field. I think it was Ron Wolf talking about Brett Favre. I remember talking to him when I was doing some stories on the early years of the Packers' rise. And he said, how'd you find Favre? He traded for him from Atlanta. He said, I just felt like when he stepped on the field, he tilted the field in your way. And McMahon, to a little lesser degree, was the same way for the Bears. And so that's what you want in a quarterback. So, yeah, I would be, I'm a lot like Les in that situation where I have no finesse. And I would be arguing the same way Les was with those callers, because to me there's just no question. I understand why people think, and rightfully, that Jay Cutler, obviously better arm talent, whatever, but
and
like
numbers.
I said,
and numbers. That's what people are looking at.
Oh, and, and production-wise, but a lot. Jim McMahon has a number in his favor too. He's like 47-9 when he's a starter or something like that. And he
wasn't. He was a really good, accurate,
he was a
smart
winner,
quarterback.
and he was a winner. And I don't mean to disparage Cutler, but a lot of times he was one of those guys who was always in the wrong place at the wrong time. Like, he would have a bad defense, or like he came to the Bears and Brian Urlacher got injured and was out for the year. He had always had a different coordinator. Well, sometimes a lot of times that was his fault, because he didn't suffer fools gladly, and so he just had trouble relating to people. So, a lot of these things were his fault. A lot of things were not his fault, like how bad the defenses were. Even in the 1 year in Denver, they lost the last 3 games of the year. They were 8-5 and leading the division. They lost the last 3 games and missed the playoffs. And I think it was 2008.
Mm-hmm.
And the defense gave up like 40 points a game or something. I can't remember. But they were always in the wrong place at the wrong time. And Jim McMahon, I think, except for the injury situation, was the opposite of that. He like I said, that's one of those Chicago sports kind of things. Is if only Jim McMahon was able to stay healthy, the Bears would have probably won another Super Bowl and at least gotten to another one. You know what I'm saying? It would have been much better than it was. That was the key to the whole thing, was Jim McMahon. So anyway, to answer your question, I'll be honest, it's ludicrous to think that that Jay Cutler was a better quarterback than Jim McMahon, for the reasons I stated.
Yeah, no, I do agree with you, man. And now you're making me – we're going down a little wormhole here, but that's the beauty of you and I talking, man. This is what we do in person, and damn it, that's what we're going to do on the radio. You're talking about, like, Jay Cutler being in the wrong place at the wrong time, surrounded by the wrong defense with Denver. Did the Broncos ultimately fleece the Bears in that trade?
Wow, I'd have to think about that. Let's see. No, the Bears did get something out of it. I mean, Jay Cutler did get them to the NFC Championship game, and he was good. He kind of gave them, they would have been in a lot of ways they would have been worse without him. So it wasn't that. But I don't think they made out that great with the draft picks. And Kyle Orton, I think they won the first 6 games with Orton.
Yeah.
But then they didn't make the playoffs that year either.
Right, sort of like his career with the Bears.
So it's the same thing. So it was one of those things where almost like neither team won. It's almost like the 49ers and the Bears with the Trubisky trade. I'm trying to think exactly how that. I see. We need Les here. He would have every single stat and number and player. But again, that's another thing that when you look at it, almost like no winner. So I don't know who won. I don't know who you would say would won. I mean, it certainly helped the Bears, but it also kind of hurt the Bears a little bit, and that kind of relates to something I've been saying this season, is that I think the Bears are better off with where Justin Fields is now. I'm more optimistic about the Bears quarterback situation at this point now than I was at almost any point in the Cutler era, because Cutler kind of fooled you. He would lead you to think that you really had something here, and unfortunately, because of a lot of intangibles that he did not have, in my opinion, he would ultimately hold you back. And I'm talking about just his lack of concentration in key moments. He'd always make a bad mistake. He just couldn't be consistent. He struggled to really have a good relationship with his offensive coordinators. He's shoving Jamarcus Webb, and he's running away from Mike Tice, and he's telling Mike Martz to go bleep off, and he had all these kinds of issues that kind of nullified all the physical things. So in a way, Cutler helped the Bears, and in another way he hurt them, because he kept convincing. They kept getting. They hired Trestman because they had Cutler. I mean, they had Adam Gase because of Cutler, and so it's kind of a double-edged sword. I think it's a two-sided thing where you can say Cutler. I mean, obviously look at his numbers. He's like statistically the best Bears quarterback of all time. As far as yardage and stuff like that, touchdowns. But I think I just think in general he's a guy who probably I think might have been better off playing another position. I think he would have been a really good NFL safety. He was a real good athlete. In fact, when he was at Vanderbilt, his freshman year, they actually played him in practice for 1 week at safety, just to see what they had. And nothing came of it, but it just shows you how much doubt there was about him as a quarterback. I mean, if he was as good as he should have been, nobody would have played him at safety. But but Cutler was always an interesting guy. He was a guy, a big guy at a small school in Indiana, but yet only like 2 schools recruited him as a quarterback. Everybody wanted him to play defense.
That's crazy.
And I think Ron Turner was one of the guys at Illinois who I think even offered him, and even that fell through. There was an issue with that. So people knew that there was something missing there. And again, not to disparage him, but I mean that's just what I saw from covering him and stuff like that there was some, and you see it in quarterbacks who are really talented. He's kind of a poor man's Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers had struggled too, put up big numbers, come up, and then in key moments would falter. I think Herbert is he's got a lot of Phillip Rivers and Jay Cutler in him, of being in the wrong place at the wrong time for a guy that everybody, all the film guys love him. I mean, they love him.
Yeah,
and
I'm a little surprised you're going
I'm
here.
dubious about Justin Herbert. Not that
Interesting.
I'm not saying he's a flop or whatever, but he seems like the kind of guy who is always in the wrong place at the wrong time and will make a great throw that you will just think that nobody else in the world can do, that not even like guys like Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes could do it. They fall in love with him. But, boy, it's just weird how, like, and like that one game where he was like, he had a terrible bad shoulder or something, and he was great. And then at the end, boom, makes the mistake. So he's kind of like that, too.
You know who's sort of like that? You know, I'm thinking of when you say that? Brett Favre.
Yeah, but Brett Favre. Well, no, Brett Favre won a Super Bowl. Brett Favre would. Here's the difference. Brett Favre would make those stupid mistakes in the beginning of the game too.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? He wouldn't make them at the end. You know, and also he got more out of, like, he was a gunslinger and he paid the price for it, but he got more benefit out of it. I would not put Brett Favre in their class as far as that kind of thing, because I think Brett Favre was a winner. I think he had that, like I said, that it factor or whatever, and made people better. So I really wouldn't include him. But I guess my general point is not to just, it's like some guys can pitch the 8th inning, some guys can pitch the 9th inning. Says nothing. There's nothing wrong with the guy who can only pitch the 8th inning. It's just some people are able to focus in clutch moments. I always tell the story. Probably told you when I'm covering the 92. We're really getting off track here.
Don't worry, man.
I'm covering the 92 Bulls NBA Finals, and it's Game 6 against the Trailblazers. And those were when the media, we were even the fringe media like myself, we were on the floor, so we'd really good vantage point. So the Bulls fall behind, and then Bobby Hansen and Stacey King and all that backup group gets them back in the game, even to the point where there was a point where you would have put Jordan and Pippen back in, but Phil Jackson kept them in there because they were playing so well together. So then finally, at the very end, now you get the guys to put the hammer down. And there was a shot, you'll have to look at the game itself. There was one point where I think Jordan takes a shot at the elbow, and I just happened to be at the right angle where I could just look right into his eyes, and you could just see the proverbial daggers. The guy just had, and he hit this key shot that told it was the dagger. It was a clincher. And my point is, you could see that this was a guy who could, he missed. He'd shoot 9 for 25 some days.
Sure.
But, something in clutch moments. Some guys can focus early in the game. Some guys can focus late in the game. Jordan was the ultimate in being able to focus at the end of the game. And so what I'm saying is there's no shame in not being able to do that. If you can only pitch the guy, I never fault the guys who can only pitch the 8th inning and not the 9th, because some guys have it and some guys don't. But the point is, and going back to the quarterbacks, is that there's a lot of intangibles with quarterbacks. I love Joe Burrow. I think he's got the it factor. I think yesterday was a great example, or Sunday, whatever, was a great example of a guy not playing at his best. But you know something? Things always seem to happen for him, including the other team playing stupid and the quarterback trying to leap over the line when he's at the 2-yard line and a fumble. Somehow, some guys just have it. And if it would have come, and if they would have scored and it would have come, and Joe Burrow would have needed to play his best in that final drive in the fourth quarter, I think his history is that he would have done it, because he's got an ability. You saw it at LSU. He's got an ability to focus in key moments. He's got it.
He's got
and
it.
So anyway, I can't remember. We were talking about Cutler, I think it was, but I guess the point is, the general point is, some guys have it and some guys don't. Now, some guys are just lucky. Like Patrick Mahomes has the bonus of not only having it, but going to the perfect team for him. It's like Marino in '83 when he went. He was the last quarterback drafted, but he was the luckiest because he went to a Super Bowl team. And the same thing with Mahomes. He went to he was the second quarterback in the draft, but he went to the perfect team, the perfect coach. Would he be the same quarterback if he were drafted by the Bears, if they took him number 3 or number 2?
Who knows?
He'd be better. He'd be better than what they had. But a lot of it. So I guess what I'm saying is a lot of it is circumstantial, but a lot of it is intangibles, and just having what it takes to not only make yourself better in key moments, but to just make other players better as well. And so I think that's really the differentiation between a guy like Cutler, going back to the very original point, a guy like Cutler and a guy like McMahon.
But by the way, first of all, man, the story that you told about seeing MJ's eyes in '92.
Yeah, it was just a perfect angle. It was just like a snapshot in time.
That's great stuff. I mean,
it's you can't quantify it, but I experienced it, and you saw. This is why Michael Jordan is Michael Jordan. Not because he is so much better than everybody, but just because he had that ability to focus when it mattered most. And that's a key thing in any of in all these professional sports. Why some guys can do that and some guys can't, and I know that because I'm not that in anything I do. I am a total choke artist, so I have an appreciation for that. I mean, there's certain things I'm good at, but not in the clutch. I just cannot focus. I can't. It's like I can write, but I can't be on TV because it's always you got to be. You got to be able to think on your feet, and I just can't do it. I'm too easily distracted. And so I wouldn't be good at that. So I guess what I'm saying is that's from personal experience. I know how important that is because I can't do it.
Yeah, no, I think I'm too disorganized to be the daggers. Like I'm more of a Brian Scalabrine, really. I've just put me in when the pressure is well off, and I'll be just fine in one of your games.
Well, what's funny about that is like one thing I do well is I'm a competitive bowler, but I'm a total choke artist. I mean, I just cannot focus, and I totally outthink myself. But there are still times where I come through and strike out in the 10th frame or whatever. But it's not because of mental toughness. It's just because I'm good at it. So that's another kind of lesson. Is sometimes you'll see a guy who has a reputation, and then he'll win a game late, and people think, oh, see, now he's got mental tough. No, some guys are just so good at things that they can. Like Cutler had a couple games early in whatever year it was. I think it was against the Bengals and the Vikings where he had like a fourth quarter touchdown pass or something like that. I mean, sometimes guys are just so good they can do it even in a tough moment. Just because you don't have mental toughness doesn't mean you like choke every time.
Right.
So that also makes it confusing because it's not absolute one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean the thing with Cutler was everybody was just hoping that his talent would overpower everything, and including. And
Cutler. It could. And for some guys, it could. Like if you put him on a really good team, like a team with a great defense, he would have won a Super Bowl.
Really?
But. Yeah, if you put Cutler on a team with a really good defense and a good running game, everything. He had to have the wind totally at his back. He definitely had great talent. I mean, and he was competitive, and he had a lot of good qualities as a quarterback. But just I think being focused in clutch moments and being consistent, were just not two of them.
Well, we were talking about that the other day. You, me, and Joniak were talking about there's a lot of offensive talent surrounding him when they had Alshon Jeffrey and Brandon Marshall and Martellus Bennett. I mean, they had some big-time – I'm probably missing somebody, but there were some big-time weapons on those teams.
Yeah, but the defense was bad. There was always something. I've written that about 10 times with Cutler. There's always something. Something always happens.
Right.
The Bears were in great shape, and sometimes it's just bad luck. Like the Bears were in great shape, and I can't remember what year it was. They all run together, but they were 7. They were 7-3. They were beating the Chargers. Ironically, our friend Rivers, Phillip Rivers, and they at the time, I think that was the year that the Packers were 15-1. And at the time they were undefeated, but the Bears were hot, and they had won like 5 in a row. They were 7-3. They were looking like the best chance to upend the Packers in the playoffs. And it was at the end of the Chargers game, and Johnny Knox slips on that turf at Soldier Field, turf monster. Again, he slips. The ball is not only is the ball intercepted, but Jay Cutler breaks his thumb, not even tackling, just going after the interceptor.
That's right.
And then the Bears lost like their next 5 games. They went to Caleb Haney. Caleb Haney, who looked like he was going to be good. I thought he was going to be good, but was so bad he actually got replaced by, I think, Josh McCown in the last game. I can't remember. But anyway, that was a sign that just told you what bad luck that Cutler had. Even when things were going his way, the Bears were looking great. He was playing well. Somebody slips, and it works out, and it just went bad for him.
Yeah,
so it's just
that's an interesting.
Some guys have all the
look
luck.
at Jay Cutler. It's That's not one I'd really ever thought of, but it is true. I mean, you've laid it out very well from his days at Vanderbilt and then with Denver and then obviously with the Bears. A lot of it's on him, like trying to throw into triple coverage like he did. But you're right. It took him a while to be. I mean, I remember when he was here for a while before they got Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey. The whole thing was this guy needs somebody who is taller than Devin Hester, and then was it Brandon Aromashadu, who everybody was like, this is the guy because he's 6'2". So yes, there was and the offensive lines tended to suck around Cutler.
They were. Well, the one year was the one year that I think was Kyle Long's rookie year when they all played all 16 games, and that was the year the Bears were second in the NFL in total points.
What was the year where he got sacked 9 times in the first half against the Giants?
Oh, against the Giants, yeah. That was not I don't think that was 2013, but that was not as good. But, I mean, that was part of it. There was always something. He, at one point, didn't have the receivers. Then he didn't have the offensive line, didn't have the defense. Just always needed everything going his way and never could get it. So that's why he didn't win any bigger, than he did. So, that's kind of the Bears. That's kind of the Bears' fate because Jay Cutler, just like Brandon Marshall. It's interesting that Ryan Poles said the other day. Do you need a number one? Well, it'd be nice to have one, but I don't feel I have to have one. You can win without one, and that was kind of the way that Jerry Angelo was very resistant. That was a big, if you remember, that was a big cry in the Lovie Smith era. Was that the Bears needed some big number one receiver, and Jerry Angelo resisted that. Well, when Jerry Angelo was fired and Phil Emery came in, the first thing he did was he traded for Brandon Marshall, and he was hailed as a genius. I mean, it was just it was a glorious thing. He finally got the Bears the player they needed. But look what happened. He was really productive, but ultimately kind of destructive, kind of self-destructive, and a tough guy to have. I won't say a bad guy, but a tough guy wasn't good for your locker room. Too many distractions, and so I guess my original point on this was that even when the Bears get the guy they really need badly, which was the quarterback in Cutler, the wide receiver in Brandon Marshall. Unfortunately, those are guys that it's really tough to win with. I guess that's the best way of putting it. And Brandon Marshall, believe it or not, he's going to be one of the few Hall of Famers never was in the playoffs.
That's unbelievable.
And if you look at the record of how many times they had a chance, just near misses and stuff, and you wonder why are these guys always in the wrong place at the wrong time?
Yeah, that's another guy.
But some guys are, I guess. So I guess that's part of the Bears' plight, right? Is even when they get the guy they want, something always seems to go wrong. So that's what they're trying to pull themselves out of yet again. After.
Well, let's go there. Games. Let's go there. Let's go to Justin Fields. And here's what I'll say, and I want to get your response to it. The Bears brass is getting closer to saying that Justin Fields is their guy, no doubt about it, but they're still not quite there because, they're seeing what the rest of the world is seeing is that he's not a complete product yet. You agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate, but I just think they're kind of pot committed at this point because of what they have, and because unless if you're referring to the draft or whatever, I mean, they're not going to draft a quarter. I don't think they are.
I don't think so either. Yeah.
Unless there's I guess I almost have to take that back, because if you would have told me that, let's say this was 2017, and what if they would have fallen in love with Patrick Mahomes and made him the number one pick? Well, on paper, Patrick Mahomes was no more revered than C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young or any of these guys. I mean, I covered those drafts. I remember that. And nobody, they saw potential, but no more potential than these other guys. So if Ryan Poles thinks one of these guys is that good, it will probably get panned if it happens, but it wouldn't, I guess I have to admit, it wouldn't be that surprising, because if you just apply it to 2017 and somebody would have taken Mahomes, look what you would have had, assuming Mahomes wouldn't have been total flop with the Bears. You know what I'm saying? It's hard to.
Right.
These guys are modular. You can't. You don't know. But I'm based on what I've seen, I think he would have still been the best quarterback in that draft, even with the Bears. I think. I don't know. So anyway, I don't know. I've kind of contradicted myself, I guess. I think it would. I don't think there's a quarterback on paper right now who would be so far above what you potentially have in Fields that you would do that. And plus the draft haul you're going to get, I think. And that's just thinking it out, almost, just trying to figure it out. It just seems like with at least one or two teams, needing a quarterback and Houston not having the number one pick anymore, I think that draft haul is going to be pretty enticing too. And with the team that needs as much help, it just makes sense that staying, is staying with Fields and seeing what you can get there is the better option. But that said, I will say I agree. He's no sure thing, and he shows a lot of, frankly, a lot of flaws that I think I can't remember how. I think I said it. It's not just a matter of time. It's like when you saw Herbert last year. He was so good, it's just a matter of time before he really became really good. But it's not a matter of time. He actually has to get better at a lot of things. And Fields, I'm talking about. So no, there's nothing for sure. But the Bears are, like I said, pot committed. I think they have to go, go with what they've got because they just have so many other holes, and because if Fields can develop into a good passing quarterback, then you've got gold.
I think that he has to. I mean, like the evidence, like I'm just looking at the quarterback numbers from all these playoff games. We saw what Dak Prescott did last night, maybe his best game ever, 305 yards and 4 touchdowns. By the way, Brady threw the ball 66 times last night. But Brock Purdy, where the hell did he come from? He had 332 yards and 3 TDs for San Fran. Trevor Lawrence, 288, 4 TDs. He actually had 4 picks as well. Josh Allen, 352 and 3 TDs. Daniel Jones, 301 yards passing and 2 TDs. He also had 78 yards running. Joe Burrow, who we talked about, had just 209, but we know the game that he played and how clutch he was. So, in other words, I mean, this is just a little sampling, right here that I'm doing in real time. You still got to be able to throw the ball a lot to win in the NFL. That's obvious.
And it's the same question we had at the beginning of the year when the question was, have you given him enough support, to see exactly what you got? And they didn't. As it turned out, they didn't. But we still don't know, chicken or the egg, is the passing game bad because of the quarterback, or is the quarterback bad because they just don't have the receivers, the offensive line, whatever?
Right. Nobody really knows.
It's just hard to tell. I'd lean more towards it being the supporting cast. I think you give him a better one, but still he hasn't shown that he's got what I call, I know people don't like this, he doesn't have the it factor. He hasn't shown, I'm not saying he doesn't have it, he hasn't shown the it factor where you make players better. I mean, who in this offense was better than they should have been? Cole Kmet had better numbers, but that was a natural advancement from a second to a third-year player. I mean, Mooney's numbers were down.
Yep.
All these guys, St. Brown, N'Keal Harry, none of these guys, Pettis and Pringle, none of them were. He didn't make anybody better than they were.
You're
so
right.
I'm not trying to. What's that?
No, you're right. Go on.
Yeah. I'm not trying to denigrate him. I'm just saying, all objectivity, I can't say he's shown an intangible that I look for in a quarterback, and that's an ability to make other players better, to raise your game in the clutch, and make and kind of almost will guys to make the catches, to make plays, which is what good quarterbacks frankly do. I know you can't quantify it, but that's what happens. But that doesn't mean he can't develop that. I'm just saying, if it goes back to what we always talked about with Cutler, was the instinct thing. How much instinct does Justin Fields actually have? I'm talking about instinct for the position.
Right.
I'll be honest, I don't know at this point in time, and that doesn't mean you can't. Doesn't mean you have to have that to be good or even win a Super Bowl. You can win without it, but that often with all these quote unquote elite guys is what makes them, and I can't say that I've seen that from him. But again, the offense has to evolve and has to be better in year 2 than it was in year 1. So Fields deserves to at least get that and see what happens. So because now that's the one thing is he's still got a better starting point than they ever had with Trubisky. just because the big plays he can make and the fear he strikes in an opposition with his running game, which Trubisky was a good runner at his best. Even at his best, he never struck fear. He never forced you to change your game plan, which is what Fields does. It's a great starting point if they get this passing offense in gear next year. So we'll see. But I think it's like I said, even though you can't, they won 3 games. To me, it's a much better starting point than they've had in previous years with Trubisky and in most years with Cutler, except some of the early ones.
Do you ever remember anything like this season where the Bears had a devastating 10-game losing streak? That's really bad. And because
wasn't that devastating to me?
I know. It didn't feel.
I'm not saying I was rooting for them to lose or it was better for them to lose.
I'm just saying objectively, when you hear a team, an NFL team, has a 10-game losing streak, that's about as bad and putrid and awful as it gets. But it did not feel that way. I didn't feel that way. You just said you didn't feel that way. So I'm asking you, has there ever been a season even close to being like that? The Bears have, 6-game losing streaks the previous 2 years, and we go nuts.
Yeah, it's. I said this was one of the best bad seasons the Bears have ever had. Have had in a long time since the end of the Ditka era.
It's so
because
true.
there was at least a purpose to it, and you didn't try to lose. And in some respects, they were worse. Their passing game was worse than it should have been. Their defense was worse than it should have been. Those are things that could be end up being red flags, down the road. But in 2012, the Bears were like 7-1 and lost. It looked like 5 out of 6. They ended up going 10-6. That was a worse second half of the season than this was, because that was the end of the Lovey era. They were on the arrow was pointing down, and now the arrow is a little bit tilted up, but at least it's not down. And so I thought this was a very bearable year for me, no pun intended, because at least the reason why it's kind of so weird is because it was the cleanest rebuild they've ever had. Nobody's ever totally torn it down like this.
It's
because
exact.
even though Pace had a tear down in his first year, he still had Cutler. And you still had that thing that's kind of in the way, and that's what I was talking about before. How that kind of got you to think whenever you have a guy like Cutler, you always think you can be a winner. Well, even with Justin Fields, they didn't expect to win more than 7 or 8 games, and they ended up winning 3. I guess to answer your question, if there was one, was that I just don't think this was. I think this was in context. This was not as bad as 10 games in a row, 3-14 would look, because it wasn't what you wanted. But when you're built to win 6 and you win 3, I don't think it's that disastrous.
Yeah, I guess you're right. It's the weirdest thing I don't
know if I'm right, to tell you the truth. I know there's another side of that argument, but that's just the way I saw it. I mean, next year, I've always said, Mark, 2020, the clock starts on Eberflus and polls in 2023.
Oh,
and the league year starts on the 15th of March.
Oh, yeah.
And technically, officially, that's when it is, but basically it's right now. Now is when the clock starts.
5 games into the season this year, you won't not hear the defensive coordinator's name. You know what I mean?
Right.
Al Williams got away with a lot this year. If the defense
the
stinks
questions
3
will
games
be a
in,
lot tougher next year. They need to win these close games. The quarterback has to take a significant step. The offense has to take a significant step. And they've got to win 8 or 9 games to avoid a lot of skepticism about where the direction they're heading. It happens. Maybe it's unfair in the big context of building a football team, but that's where we are today. Where year 2, especially when you've made year 1 so purposely bad. Year 2 needs to show needs to show a lot more progress. So now they had an easy year. The questions will be, and I can tell you, the questions will be a lot tougher if they don't make a lot of progress in 2023.
Bears fans are like, you get 1 year. We're not gonna watch everything you do this 1 year, but next year it's on. And Potsy, thanks so much, man. We'll see you I assume you'll be out at the press conference later on today for the new president and CEO of the Bears, Kevin Warren, at noon today, brother.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely, I will. I'm looking forward to that.
All right, Potsy, thanks for coming on.
Okay, Mark. Yeah, thanks again for doing this show. I really appreciate it as a listener and as your friend.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Same, man. And I know that it is tough to be up this late, but you're a trooper, and I appreciate it. And we'll talk to you
it's
soon.
like the old days when I actually got to listen to Les. So it's been
exactly.
a good thing for me to do this. So I appreciate it.
Oh, good. Awesome, man. Thanks, Mark. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, Mark.
Man.
Talk to you later.
I want to get to some of your calls here, and for people waiting, I appreciate you doing that. A lot of good text messages too, as we honor the life of Les Grobstein. We lost Les a year ago yesterday, and we have the opportunity until 5 o'clock this morning to share stories of Les Grobstein or just talk about sports the way Les Grobstein would. This is Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score.
Bananas. I love them.
Let's go back to the phones, and I do apologize for, Allison. Is this Allison?
It sure is, Mark. How are you?
I am doing really well, Allison. Thanks for waiting. I appreciate you doing that. What is on your mind about our buddy Les Grobstein?
Well, I tell you, Kathy has been keeping me awake all night. It's been quite a great show, and the thing that's so funny with Les is no one has mentioned yet tonight about his mentorship. Now, you have to understand that Les and I go back, let's see, 1988 was the year that I met Les. Understand I was like 5 years old. No, I wasn't. I was actually doing a Special Olympics charity broadcast and asked him to do it because, he was everywhere. And a year later, I got an internship with WBEZ, and I was in the press box. And Les was virtually the only other person that I knew in the press box. And the thing that was so important about him was that he was like a tiger when it came to protecting me. I was one of very few people in there. I mean, we had Cheryl Ray Stout, who I know you know, and we had Cheryl. Cheryl preceded me by a few years. There was Carrie Muscat, who was the great reporter from UPI and MLB.com. There were a handful of people from TV, maybe like a couple of them. And so we women were very few in those days. And the thing that was great about Les was that he really took me under his wing and kept me there for as long as I've been bouncing in and out of this crazy career. And he would come up, recommend me for jobs. You were talking about a story, by the way, that I was actually in the room where it happened, the one with Bob Glass and Tony La Russa.
Oh my God! You heard that? You heard it earlier. That was so great.
Mark. You know that I am also a Grote fan. You know that.
I appreciate that. Yes.
And so, I mean, you've been a good friend when we've met up at Bears games and things like that, and so I've appreciated that. But I was in the room when Tony La Russa exploded, and Les and I actually were the only two individuals who had tape recorders, and it was a real small press conference. It was a real the Sox weren't that good that year, and so it was long just not of interest at that point. And I remember cowering behind Les and just going, okay, Mike's out. I'm not getting involved in this. I'm not going to try to ask a question. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to let the tape recorder put that on. And I remember George Hoffman saying to me the next day, wow, that tape has been everywhere. And I'm like, damn, I wish I could have gotten paid for that. But the thing was, that Les continued to mentor me throughout my career. He recommended me for blogs. He recommended me for coming on at the station down the dial for doing sports work with him, sparred with him on a regular basis, but loudly. But the thing was that there was no denying that he was a very proud mentor to so many people in this business, and who were he was a good quarterback that made everybody better around him.
That's such a good reminder about that. Although we're having fun and there's so many great Les stories, and I certainly have carried on the caricature of Les. It's a great reminder that he was a mentor, as you said, to a lot of people in the business, just like yourself.
Yeah, and the thing was that he was never afraid of being generous with his time, with his talent, with his recommendations, and so gentle suggestions on how to do it better. I remember him yelling at me one day when he thought I'd asked a really stupid question of Vinny Del Negro.
Okay.
Do you remember? Yeah. Oh, he's like, you should never ask a question that way. Never.
What did you do? What do you remember what the critique was specifically? I'm wondering what. I don't know Les's. I know his style, but I don't know what he doesn't like.
Well, what he didn't like was that I meandered on the question, and so he's like, you got to make it snappy. You got to make it back. He goes, you just have to be so much sharper.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And you were. I mean, yeah. And so I would get these critiques every now and again, but it was all really helpful, and I couldn't dispute what he was saying. Unfortunately, I hated it when he was right, but ultimately it made me a better broadcaster, and it certainly has stood me well wherever I've been public speaking, and to really think about and be thoughtful about what it is that we all want to say. So and I can only imagine how many other people got that same kind of lesson out there.
Yeah, got a lesson, and you, like I was talking about with Greenberg earlier, Jon Greenberg, he, on top of all of that, his, whatever technical expertise he had in terms of how to do a sports report or all the different things he did, he was a spectacular character and a great personality and pretty much one of one, I think. I mean, I really don't know the comp to Grobber. I really don't.
Yeah, he was amazing. I have one other story and I can tell that he's watching over all of us and probably me, because I do a lot of freelance work. And writing of all kinds and broadcasting and things like that when I have a spare moment. And the thing that was crazy was Les had written all over my LinkedIn page, highly recommended, blogging, highly recommended, broadcasting, highly recommended, writing, things like that. And I got a call from somebody in a related field. It wasn't broadcasting, but it was using technology. And he said to me, I looked at your LinkedIn profile, and if Les Grobstein recommends you, I want you on my team.
Oh, nice. Wow. That's great.
I'm like, gosh, Les is still watching over me.
What's that, Allison? We're losing you a little bit there. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said Les is still watching over me.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for waiting. And for me, it was well worthwhile. And I think a lot of our listeners and texters appreciated the stories and the insight and to know a different mentorship side of Les Grobstein as well. Thank you so much, Allison.
Absolutely, Mark. Anytime. Take care.
All right. I will talk to you soon. Thank you so much. And I appreciate everybody who is listening right now. I'm Mark Grote. 312-644-6767 is the number. I'm going to be here until 5 a.m. this morning. It's a Grobber Memorial Show. It was a year ago yesterday that we lost Les. And, yes, one of those jarring marking of time. It was a year ago? Really? Yeah, that was a year ago. And we are doing the memorial, the tribute show tonight. When we come back, we're going to get some good stories from Mark Carmen of CHGO. Mark goes way back with Grobber as well, and I believe, I've heard the story before, but I can't get enough of it, and I don't always remember every detail. Mark Carmen helped Les Grobstein move, I think, one time. And I don't know that there really needs to be more to the story because you could kind of fill in, choose your own adventure with a premise like that, I would think. But we'll talk to Mark about that next. We'll also take some of your calls later on, and then the boss will be on at 4 o'clock this morning. One of the people in this industry who made the smart decision of hiring Les Grobstein, and Mitch Rosen will join us at 4 o'clock. I'm Mark Grote. This is Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score.
Everybody, you weren't down there, I was.
Danny and I are kind of meandering about it, and we're both looking at each other like, is this going where we think it's going here? Like, what's happening? Like, okay, no drugs, certainly not the cocaine, doesn't drink. And then, what is it when you're conceived? Spit take. Is he saying what we think he is saying? Yes. Les Grobstein admitted to being a sex addict. Hey, that good. And who knows how he actually meant that? Like
bananas. I love them.
Right. Bananas. He was equipped, too, to be a sex addict. But I don't even know if you keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means in terms of that. Like, is it the careless form of addiction that was, oh, man, I'm addicted to chocolate chip cookies, like that we all say? Or is it the actual addiction? It's like, I don't know. I should have done the follow-up, should have had the clarification with Grobber on that, but I didn't get it. But that's the beautiful thing, man. We relive these moments, and then we riff off of them, and we get a little something different out of them every single time. And that's why I love doing this show, and that's why I always like to talk about Les Grobstein if people will indulge me. And one person that I know that I have always talked about with Les Grobstein, he also has a similar appreciation of Les Grobstein, that we're about the same age, and this guy, our next guest, Mark Carmen of CHGO, listened to him as a Ute, got to be in the business with him, and has a similar appreciation for Les Grobstein as well. And the Carm joins us right now on 670 The Score. What is going on, Carm?
Marco, this is a sincere pleasure to celebrate Les tonight. And listening to that piece, I don't think even when he led you right to sex that I would have gotten it.
I know. We're like, man, it was like the build-up. I don't know if maybe there is video of Parkins and I have no idea if we had the old Twitch stream going that night. But we got to this point where we were suddenly in the wilderness. Like we had exhausted all the other possibilities. What direction are we going here? And then the clue, what is it when you are conceived? Sex.
It was such a vintage Parko way because he's like, first of all, he admits to not listening. Then he nobody likes being detective more than that dude.
Yeah.
It's sex.
Yeah. You asked.
Well, I mean, I feel like we could talk at least. I mean, everything's got to be on the table at this point. But Les once told me, he had been married and divorced, I think 3 times. He told me before he met Kathy, and I said, I said it kind of like in like some level of, disgust. Like you've been married 3 and divorced 3 times. Like, but I got 3 to say yes. Like, this guy is a competitor. He's a competitor on anything. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. By the way, Les Grobstein getting married and divorced 3 times. Surprising, not surprising.
You're right. Well, yes, exactly. But like, I think then it's just and the way he spoke about Kathy for, I don't know, was 20 years more. It was beautiful, but and that's not what I'm here for, Marco. You want to talk about the move?
Oh yeah. So I was right about that because you told me the story before, but then it kind of like goes away, and so I need you to set it all up for us, man. Give us when, the where, the hows, and the whys of you, Mark Carmen, helping Les Grobstein.
So I'm going to give you the full genesis of this move.
Oh, good.
Which. Okay, so I figure we have a second, perhaps.
I'm literally sitting back right now. Go ahead.
Yeah, so 1998, the Bulls are in their final run, right? And I'm just starting out, and I was also and there was a show, which, of course, you remember, Marco, because it was the first time I think you filled down the score, was with the coach and the kid, which before that was The Naked Truth About Sports on good old 92.7 The Bear. And somehow, we had credentials for the last year of Jordan, which was incredible for a kid coming out of college and getting, who worshiped Jordan. And everybody would, cover the Bulls then. So me and Seth Marks were both just felt like completely we didn't belong at these events. Again, at all.
I know.
We're sitting at dinner one night with Les, Bruce Levine, David Schuster. I don't know who else was at the table. George Austin. Like literally in our mind, this was like the biggest table of royalty you could ever be at. Like we had made it. We were eating dinner with these dudes, and I had this like old huge tape recorder thing. And we're literally sitting there like, I can't believe he's like, I can't believe it either. He's like, we got to record it. So, and I'm like, we can't record dinner with these guys, but I couldn't like stop myself. So I like put the recorder underneath my chair and just, and started recording it because, not that we were ever going to use it other than just to listen back just to prove we were there. But
listen to what Bruce Levine said, man.
We were trying to like get some dirt. We were just like, this is never going to happen again. Right. We have to have this. and so Les, being the detective that he is, he sees me recording and he gets really, irate, basically.
Oh, okay.
And I had like this weird microphone that was plugged into the recorder, and he sees it. He's like, "You'd get better reception if you unplugged the microphone." And I was like, it was terrible, right? Like I spent the rest of the night like going around like, Les, trust me. When we were trying to get any dirt, and we just like, you have to understand, you're our hero.
I don't believe you. KMA, get away.
Exactly. He was like, it was like the worst thing you could have ever done. But so then, 6 months later, I'm trying to make my way at the Score as a fill-in producer. And the first thing you do in that role is, you're going to shift and do the overnights. And it was me and Lawrence Holmes were like the main two people producing the Grobber. And so I'm trying to do anything I can to ingratiate myself to Les, ingratiate myself to the Score, whatever. And so he just asked me after one shift, he's like, Mark, what are you doing this weekend? I'm like, I don't know. Les, I don't really have any plans. Great. You can help me move.
Love how he puts it. Good, then you can help me. It's settled.
Exactly. I'm like, what did you do? I don't help my friends move.
Right.
I barely know you. What do you like? That's the worst thing that I could ever consider doing.
Oh my God.
You have to be kidding, but I'm like, well, I guess I'm helping the Grobber move because this is what it takes to get in the business.
That's right, man. Cheap labor for Grobber. That'll get you somewhere.
Unbelievable.
Right. So I get there, and he's living in Elk Grove Village, and I mean, Marco, he had and I'm sure you believe this, he had every media guide, program,
sure,
any trinket from any year was just like strewn about in his house. And then he's like, okay, now we got to go to my storage facility, and we go to this storage facility where he's got everything else piled to the top, and he's like, I'm like looking at this in utter horror, like, this is just me and you. There's no way we're going to finish this tonight, or ever. And I don't know what are we doing? Like, just throw this stuff out, please.
Yeah.
And he's like looking, he's sorting through the stuff, and he's like, here you go, you can have this. And he's a Northwestern Ohio State program from 1978.
I don't need this one. I got duplicates.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
That's
I love
awesome.
the cat.
Here you go, kid. That'll satiate you for payment, won't it?
So I said, I'm like, Les, we're gonna need to get some help here. Me and you can't do this. Do you have anyone? Yes. Let me call some of my friends, or at least one of them. And so I got my good buddy from Iowa. And who also just graduated college and needed money. He joined in. Dave Rogers joined the crew, and we spent all day Saturday and I think part of Sunday. It was a 3-day move getting him set up in his new condo, and he had like bookshelves that were like stacking all the media guides on there. And I'm thinking, this is ridiculous. Throw these out. And he's like looking at his getting stacked. He's like, this is gonna look great. I'm like, no, it isn't. But great,
No,
good for
it's
you.
not.
All right, let's just be
But
done.
to him, it does. It looks beautiful.
Yeah. Look, this is gonna be great.
Yeah.
And so the thing ends. I'm like, he's let me. And at the end, like I was worried he wasn't gonna like. I thought he'd give us like $20 each. But the Grobber in his first class way, he paid us both like more than it would have cost a normal mover. And he took us to dinner. So we went to Lou Malnati's, and he's like, "Do you guys anything you want?" And I'm like, "Whatever. Like, let's get the pizza. Let's do it." He's like, "All right, can we get low-fat cheese?" And I looked at him like cross-eyed, like, "What are you, nuts?" he's like, "Trust me, you won't know the difference." I'm like, "All right, let's go." Let's go. Low-fat cheese, Lou Mal, Sunday night, post-move.
Oh,
and
that sounds awful. But go on.
But he was right. I didn't really notice the difference.
Really?
And that was our dinner. And he handed us up. Oh, I think whatever it was. And he's like, "Are you guys happy?" Yeah, Les, we're happy. He's like, "Okay, good. I just want to make sure that you guys feel like this was fair," which was like first class Grobber.
Yeah.
So all's well that ended well. And it was 3 days.
So you helped him move for 3 days, and unless I missed it, you just got a pizza out of it? Is that accurate?
No, he kicked out cash. I think he gave us at least. I think he gave us at least. I don't remember exactly, but it was. I was pleased. I think it was $200 or $300 he gave us each. I'm like,
oh wow, okay.
You gave us like $600. Like you could have called like the actual movers. They would have done this at like.
I don't trust them. I don't trust them touching my stuff. That's what he would have said.
I trust Carmen and Rogers, who are completely incapable of. How do we box this? You have tape.
Oh man, I never really thought of. There are so many things that, like, if there's a heaven and we go to that heaven, I want to just see God's videos. Like, can I rewatch? Can I see this moment with you and Grobber and who's the other guy, Stebbins or whatever? I want to see you three guys. Like, I want to see that video of that happening. And there's so many Grobber stories like that you
I don't trust him as far as I could breathe.
I'm lucky to have witnessed many of the Grobber things, but there's so many things that I have not gotten to be a part of with Grobber.
I think in the middle of that move, or it might have been something else, I was riding in his car with him, and we were talking, but he had the score on, and I think it was a heavy fuel crew, and like he's like, shh, I want to hear this.
They're about to mention me. They better.
He was taking notes. The Grobber. He had that lean forward. And riding in a car with Les was an absolute treat and terrifying.
It was just like you would think it would be. Like Les's car is just like you think it'd be. There's a lot of paper. There's programs. There's the customary. There's some fast food, half emptied Burger King thing. It's not horrible. It's just what you would expect.
Yep. I think I heard Schuster call it a file cabinet on wheels.
A poorly kept file cabinet, by the way.
Yes. And you'd see him come out of whatever game, and he'd have that Marantz tape recorder around his, and he had the sort of weird Phil Jackson bad hip shuffle that he'd have going to the car, and he'd get in there and like speed off like I'm going to Dayton for the Flyers.
Yeah, right.
Look, that game is in 30 minutes and it's an 8-hour drive. I'm gonna make it by halftime.
Right. It is, and sure enough, there's his little microphone poking around everybody else in the post-game locker room, and I'll be damned if I'm not hearing his actualities right now. Yes, yeah. The Grobber was magic.
He really was. We missed him, man. Les was.
Yes.
That era will never be duplicated. Him, Red Motlow, I'll throw that name in there. Just dudes that were walking down those. I mean, like I literally would look at them like that's Michael Jordan. He's been to so many games. He gets to be in the bowels of arenas. He's talked to so many athletes.
Yeah.
I want to be you.
Right. Get a little bit. Just get a little whiff. Just a little whiff of that is what you're looking for. That is so true.
When did you first bond with Les, Marco? If I may.
Well, I'm trying to think of. I think it was when as I said earlier, like I always loved listening to Les because in some ways he spoke my language. Like I loved like the 80s Cubs. I loved DePaul basketball. Like those were two huge passions of mine. And so Les spoke to me in that way. Like I liked that minutia, or like when he would talk about those classic, Steve Olivares type of names, Ivan DeJesus and all those kind of guys. So I give that as the background to when I was working at the school, when I first started doing it, when I was working downstate, coming up like every other weekend to do like a noon to 6 Sunday update shift. I would drive 3 hours to do that, and I would oftentimes on a Saturday, Grobstein and I would cross over. Like I would do an update, and then Les would be the next host in. And Les, when he started his show, before he started his show, would always just mess with the update guy, just like all his silly drops he would throw in there, like just like just a barrage, And I'm like, what the hell is this guy doing? And he's like, don't worry about it. I do it to everybody. But then I was talking to him like I felt like I knew him, by the way, first of all, just from listening to him. So I felt very comfortable around him, and I felt like I knew him. And so a lot of times there's danger in that because most of us are sometimes not who you expect us to be. But Les was, I was right. I was right. We immediately bonded because we talked to Paul and Cubs. And it just kind of blossomed from there. And then our second go around, when we both were hired, well, he was hired to do overnights. I started back full time at the Score after my days at BBM in 2010, part of the Mully and Hanley show. And I was doing the updates for those guys. And Les would do his overnight show, and I would come in and I would just grab a mic with Les at 4 a.m, and we just start talking, and it was just the chemistry that we had was unbelievable because I knew how to get to him, but I also knew how to have fun conversations with him and stuff that we bonded over, and it was just a great radio marriage that Les and I had in a very unique kind of underground way. You know what I mean?
I do, and in my sleep schedule at that point, I just remember I was addicted to 440 with the two of you.
Because it truly did. You could expect it to go to zigzag, digress, maybe even get a little bit bad at times. And then it would and then we would topple it in the end. You know?
Yes, because you'd poke at the bear. Because how could you not?
Yeah, how could you not? Exactly. I mean, it was too easy at times, and I thought it made for some pretty good radio too at times.
It was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. I miss it, Marco. I do.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think the other stuff about Les that people obviously know, but just integrity dude in his own integrity grabber way, and had a huge heart, and the same bonding that you had. I sort of had. I guess it's just good to hear you kind of underline it, because I would try to prove it because he knew everything, and the only thing I could keep up with him on was, listen, you want to talk anything about the Jordan era, I will be right there with you. In fact, I think I know more than you because I am that sick with it.
I know.
And so I think I earned his respect that way, because I'm no, that, because I could hang in there with him. But you also just made me think of just producing his show at 3 a.m, and you're sitting there and you can't wait for it to be 5 o'clock so you could go home. And then all of a sudden at 3 a.m. he gets some call, gets triggered. He's like, no, there's no way that happened because Fenwick was in the Red West in 1954 and not the Red Central, so they couldn't have played. And I'm like sitting there looking at him across the desk did you just get in an argument about high school conferences in the 50s?
That's the essence right there. Take the snapshot. That's the essence of Grobber Score overnight. That he'll play the hits. He'll talk about the Bulls playing Detroit this Thursday in Paris, but then he'll hit you. He'll smack you really tough with 1950s inner Chicago Conference talk. Absolutely.
Right. Dave Kingman was an ass. No, in 1954, Whitney Young didn't exist, or what?
Yeah, right. A lot of people think it did. I repeat, it did not exist. But the best part was that the person on the other line was just as serious about the conversation and the topic as Les is.
Yep. And the one that I'm remembering, I think Grobber said, "Oh, you're right."
Wait, Grobber said, "Oh, you're right"?
No, the other way. I know I'm right. Yeah. Don't call back here again without knowing what you're talking about.
Yeah, right. Some things just that insulted his sensibilities, unlike other people. They were a little bit outside of the box, and he would just whoa, damn, Les, man, you hit that guy hard, and I don't know if it was necessary, but you got him, you know.
Well, right, it mattered to him. This was, he had that. It was so weird. He had his scorebook that he would carry around, which to record every game. And I'm like, what are you putting in that thing? Like, are you going basket by basket at this Bulls game? Like, don't you just sit here and watch the game? It's got 3 years of games in it. I'm like, would you like to? I can go back and okay. I've never seen anybody do this literally for one game, let alone over the years. This is kind of an amazing accomplishment.
I would love to look at the Grobber score, because you know that he went against the official scorers many times. I don't care what he said. That was an error. He should have made that play. That's the way it's going down in my book. E4. I don't care what Bob Rosenberg says.
Well, and he sat next to Frost games. He sat right next to Harvey Wittenberg, who was
that's right, official Blackhawks scorer. Yeah,
right. And him and Harvey were buddies.
Man,
him and Rosie were buddies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Well, yeah. You mentioned David Schuster and Bruce Levine. They loved him. They knew Bruce and David loved him to the core, but they knew the character that was like the Schuster-Grobber relationship was hilarious because they were like a press box act, you know?
They were, and you know, at Soldier Field, they sat next to each other. You have assigned seats, and the WGN radio seat is right next to it. So that was my Sunday for like 3 years. The two of them, like Schuster being just instantly annoyed the second he saw him on a Sunday, to me just like watching Les strategize the food, like they put out. I remember, maybe that wasn't at Soldier because it wouldn't add up. But like I remember one time they put out hamburgers, and he like late, and he took like 3 of them, and I think he ate the meat, and then he kept the buns and like put them in his bag.
Oh God.
He's like, now I've got bread for lunch tomorrow. I'm like, oh my God.
Do you need anything, Les? Can we help you?
Like a loaf of bread is $2, but it wasn't the money. It was like just like gaming the system, you know?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say he likes to beat the system. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Beat the system.
Listen, they put out burgers. I took 3.
Hey, if they say anything to me, you know, they could stuff it up. You know where.
that was a disappointment in the end there. That it had gone sideways with like less than some of the teams as far as that's concerned. Like, come on, man, this is he's Les. Let him do whatever he's going to do.
Let him, yeah, lighten up. All right, take the handcuffs off. Let him back into your press box. We know he's like a bad child. Like, we know he screwed up, but he's really a good kid. Can we just get him back in there? He didn't know what he was. Everybody likes him. Come on.
Yeah, and he was mad about it too. He's like, I'm not going back. The last time I saw him at a game was Northwestern was playing at Wrigley. I forget exactly whatever event, whoever they were playing that day, and it was great to see him. You know, Les hang in there. You could tell that he was, age was starting to catch up just a little bit. I will.
Carmio, I gotta go, man, but I really appreciate you getting up. I knew, you were a last second ad, and I kind of knew. I was like, you know what? Carm's up. I'm trying to book people I know will be up and wanting to talk. And what you were perfect, Mark. You were just perfect.
Marco, appreciate you getting me. It was 100% my pleasure. Thanks for having me, and super happy you're doing this. So keep rolling.
All right, buddy. Thanks. That's Mark Carmen from you too, man. That's Mark Carmen from CHGO. I'm Mark Grote, and yes. This is happening right now. This is live. I'm Mark Grote. We are talking about Les Grobstein. And we got a little time right now before the top of the hour when we'll bring in the boss, Mitch Rosen, who was very close with Les and obviously brought him to the score for his second go-around. So we'll get the history lesson from him. But we got time for you guys to get in right now as well. If you want to share a Les memory or just talk sports, You know, we've been doing that a little bit tonight, too. 312-644-6767 is the number to call or to text. And we thank you all for listening. I see you guys out there. Appreciate it here on Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score.
Bananas. I love them.
I want to hear from you guys. 312-644-6767. We start with Rich in Old Town. What's going on, Rich? You're on The Score.
Mark, this is like flashbacks. You know, when I hear your voice, Sean, and it just reminded me of two things I wanted to comment about since we've met. One is the comment is, and I share the previous callers, having the overnight kind of disappear. Your competitors are terrible. I mean, when you look at other radio syndicates that are doing late night, it's nothing like the way you guys do it. So if you're going to talk to your boss in a few minutes, you ought to tell him the sentiment is, hey, let's bring it back. Let's get a guy that knows Chicago sports, because it's not even close.
Well, Rich, I bet he's listening right now. So your point will be taken in whatever way it will be taken.
Well, I got a grabber story for you, because he and I go way back because we're the same age, and we could commiserate with all the old stories that the young kids really couldn't relate to. So we'd always talk about the 70s and the 80s and the Bears and, you know, the former players. But here's something that was wild. When I first met Les, I actually met him. I was a corporate guy, as we talked, for a long time, and a sponsor. So we had skyboxes in virtually every city. I was living here at the time when I first met him. And I ran into him. This is funny. I ran into him at a Bear game with customers. And we just kind of shot the bull because we have some common friends that are in the business. And we were talking, and he goes, what are you doing later? I said, well, I've got a second wave of customers for a Bulls game tonight. He goes, well, I'll be there. And this is like during the Bears game. I said, well, look, I'll put your name on the list. Come up to the box and you can meet some of our customers. So he did. He shows up, and we have about, 14 customers in there. And over the course of the game, he remembered every single customer's name like they were his best friends.
Wow.
It was unbelievable. And then about maybe 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, he comes up to me and thanks me for inviting him and says, I got to go. I said, you got to go? He goes, yeah, I'm doing the show. He went from the Bears game to the Bulls box with me and goes and does the overnight.
Of course he
did.
I'm
thinking, I was tired just watching the game. And he's going off to do the radio show. And I'm thinking, this guy's like, he's the Lou Gehrig Iron Man of sports talk. This guy just blew me away.
Yeah.
To have a guy that committed, and I know there's probably a lot more stories than that, but I got to tell you something. You know, he and I shared a lot of. We both couldn't find our car keys, but we knew every stat you've ever heard of. So talking to him, like talking to your father about, hey, you're 1978. This guy is a walking encyclopedia, and I at first thought he was making it up. There wasn't one thing he's ever told me that wasn't right.
Right. Yeah, he had a pretty good hit rate, and he didn't hit everything, but his hit rate was probably better than a lot of people's, especially when he gets himself. Yeah,
I want to commend you too, because what kept it going was when you jumped in behind Les and picked that up for a while, and people were glad because you didn't really miss a beat. Now you have the syndication going on late at night, and I'm not going to name names, but you could probably figure it out. We're very well received. And I went around the dial on Odyssey just to see if there's anything close to the overnight score show. And you can tell Mitch this, there just isn't. It's a wasteland out there. And getting somebody on at night would be, I think, big ratings.
Well, Rich, thank you, man. I appreciate your support of overnight radio and the Les story as well. It is all very appreciated, my friend. 312-644-6767 is the number. We're going to go to, I'm being told that we're going to Terry in Chicago. Hello, Terry. You're on the score.
Hey, Mark. Good evening. It's great to hear your voice. It's great to hear Grauber's voice. I have been a big fan of Grauber, long time listener. And you made a really good point a while ago in the show about how difficult it is because people just aren't wired to do this type of a thing 5 days a week overnight like that. It's really a difficult thing. But he took to it like a duck to water. And I sometimes wonder, were the overnights made for less or was less made for the overnights? Because it was a glove in hand type of a thing. He seemed to relish it, embrace it, and really revel in it. And a lot of people go through the motions overnight, and they this is a perfunctory thing. I got to get through it. He seemed to love it, and people fed off of it. And that is not something that I think is going to be duplicated no matter what happens with the score overnight. I hope it goes away from syndication, but I don't think we're ever going to see the likes of Les Grobstein again. And, man, I am so sad for that, but I love that man.
Thanks for the call, man. Yeah. I mean, as I always say, I mean, he perfected the overnight radio. I think he perfected it. And that's such a great point that the call that Terry was making there. Like, it wasn't a thing to him to do overnight radio 5 days a week. Like, it was no big deal to him. He bragged about where he was going and places he went and how many hours he did. Yeah, they'd be like, "Oh, they got you doing 7 hours." Yeah, that's right. But he took it as a badge of honor. No big deal. Like, there was never a time like where you would walk in with Les and he's like, "Oh man," he's like, "That was I got 2 more hours and this is going wrong and that's going wrong." Like, no, like with Les, it was just more for him as far as he was whatever was put in front of him, he was going to perform and he was going to do it at the same level he always did it. Whatever level that you think he was, he did it at that level for the entire show. In terms of like his energy and everything that goes into it. 5 days a week, rain or shine, is unbelievable. Like, so yeah, like. Was he made for overnights or was overnights made for him? It's a great question. Now we go to Quarter D. Quarter D in Joliet. What's going on, Quarter D?
Mark Grote, hey, what's going on, my brother? How you doing?
Good, brother. How are you, man?
I'm blessed, brother, blessed. Yeah. Got to pay my respects to the late, great Les Grobstein.
Yes.
Man, can't believe it's been 1 year, brother.
Sing it.
Gone but not forgotten, truly missed.
Truth.
Yeah, no doubt. Hey, so check it out, Mark. Are you guys still doing the syndicate? I mean, you doing overnight still or what?
Yeah, no, Score Overnight still exists, and I believe that for the most part it is the best of the score, all the great interviews from the previous day. So it is recorded, but I do believe it's a local version, I think.
Yeah, because I checked it out like last week and everything, and it was the one guy, JR. He comes on from like 7 to like 1, and then Amy Lawrence is like from 1 to like 5.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'm like, what's going on with the with the 6:70 a.m. Score Brothers? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a work in progress, and I appreciate that you guys, how much it meant to you. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who thrive on local radio 24 hours a day. I get it, and I appreciate all these calls because that must mean we're doing something right, I guess, huh?
Yeah, see, the main thing was Les Grobstein. That was my guy, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that was my guy. That was my bread and butter. That's my medicine. He worked the same days I did, Sunday through Thursdays, midnights I get off and everything, and Les is there,
Yeah, yep. He's like, he was a trusted companion who, like, he was never, like, I never really even considered life without Les. Like, he wasn't supposed to be the one. So that's the way I always look at it. Like, it's just astonishing that he was gone because of what the machine-like work that he did that we all became acquainted with. In a lot of cases, just listening to a lot of the callers tonight, a lot of people needing that. And, just it can be, listening to the radio can be a form of therapy. There's no doubt about it. Let's go to Wayne in West Lafayette. What's going on, Wayne? How you doing, brother?
Hey, Grote, old buddy, how you doing, man? You're out of football action now. It's always a sad time when that last game hits, but you did a great job again this year. And the Grobber would be proud of you like he always would be.
I think so. I'd like to think so, and I appreciate that, Wayne. Thank you.
I know that for sure, old buddy. And the Grobber and me go way back, and this is where it all started, Grote. Back when I was delivering those Journal Courier newspapers early in the morning, listen to the Grobber and call him. He'd get me right on there, boy. He'd be wanting to talk to me about them gut buster pizzas from Garcia's pan pizzas in West Lafayette and all this other stuff. And I'll tell you what, he was just amazing and one of the most classy people you ever want to meet.
Absolutely, man. And thank you, Wayne. Appreciate the call. Yeah, Les was the goods, and everybody has their own. Some of the duels with some of the same callers were it was like oftentimes it was like a fight to the death, but then you get up and you're friends again, and you live to tell another day. That was a lot of times that was the vibe of a lot of the callers. One of my favorite moments with Grobber in terms of I definitely did poke the Grobber every once in a while. I did do that for my entertainment and, quite frankly, for your entertainment. And this was one of my faves, talking about the potential Arlington Heights Stadium and what that might mean for the initials of the Chicago Bears.
Mark, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Les. What is all of this Arlington Heights Bears stuff? It sounds like you're printing up AH hats already.
People keep coming up with what are they going to call them? And the answer is they're going to be the Chicago Bears. Period. Let me again repeat. You have two teams in New Jersey. Do they call themselves the Meadowlands Giants and Jets or the New Jersey Giants? No, they're the New York Giants.
Well, what if that's one of
Jets.
the parts of the deal? What if Arlington Heights says the only way you can come here is if we put that AH on the hat?
Mark, the NFL will never allow that to happen.
Oh, you don't think
it's
the NFL
all a
would
marketing thing? Do you think that they're going? What's on the side of the Bears helmets?
Well, there's a C right now, but I'm just saying maybe
they're not going to be called the Arlington Heights Bears. People have to understand that. Anybody who thinks otherwise. Now, you sometimes like to come on here and just kind of make waves, whatever. I get what you're doing. Don't buy into it, Mark.
Oh, man, I
don't buy into it, Mark. Don't buy into it.
I felt naked at the end of that. I was like, I know what you're doing to me, Grote. Actually, part of me was like, okay, good. I'm glad he does understand sometimes that I'm just poking the bear a little bit. Hey, how about this, Sean? What if today, when the new Bears CEO and President Kevin Warren speaks, as he will, and you'll hear it live on the Score at noon, what if he does say, and finally we are considering the possibility of a once a year changing to the, like they do special uniforms and stuff like that. Instead of the orange, we're going to do a special AH helmet to commemorate. Just imagine if that did happen and Les was still alive.
Rolling over in his grave.
Yeah, he's like, they should never change. I think it's stupid when they change the uniforms in the first place, let alone if they put an AH. That's not the Bears. I don't recognize it. I don't. Forget it. I mean, like all the things that it took Les way to, forget it with the ballpark.
Yeah, it sucks, and it's kind of embarrassing.
There was never, I don't think in Les's mind, U.S. Cellular Field ever existed. I don't believe it did. I don't know where we were with Guaranteed Rate Field. I don't even think he was comfortable saying Comiskey. It is not Comiskey. Comiskey is across the street. That's not the same place. Yeah.
It sucks, and it freebases.
It does. So we got a lot. We got a lot to get to still, in the 4 o'clock hour here on The Score, including we'll bring in Mitch Rosen. Mitch Rosen's the boss around here, and he, like all of us, has a very unique, interesting, and relationship with Les, and one that needs to get more detailed, which we will do with Mitch Rosen coming up. More of your calls as well. Mitch and I will both take your calls. It would be delightful. We talk to Mitch, and we take your calls at 312-644-6767. This is Score Overnight, talking about Les Grobstein. I'm Mark Grote on Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score.
Everybody, you weren't down there, I was.
That is the essence all rolled into 1-2 minute cut right there. Just the beautiful back and forth, and the fact that we were talking about ugly athletes, which turned into Super Bowl talk, which turned into Les getting very angry with me because he clearly had some scam going, trying to either go to the Super Bowl or I don't know what he was trying to do, and he probably didn't want our next guest to hear us discussing that. Mitch Rosen runs The Score. He runs BetQL. He joins us on The Score right now. And that was the essence, right, Mitch? Like he didn't want you to know what he was concocting, trying to get himself to the Super Bowl that year, apparently.
I don't want to talk about it. Don't talk about it. No, hey, good morning, Marky. Hey, and good morning to all the scoreheads listening. What a night it's been. I started listening around 2 or 2:30, and just a great salute and testament to our dear friend and colleague and teammate who passed away, a year ago yesterday. And I know you and I, remember that day and night, and just incredible. But that story, Les would always go and as everything else, you watch budgets and things like that. So he would go on his own. But the problem there was we never were sure from a technical standpoint how it would sound. So the year before we had major issues wherever the Super Bowl was the year before. So I said, Les, I don't want to take the chance of you getting there and it not sounding good. So we were kind of in a holding pattern and weren't sure if he was going, from a technical standpoint. So I said, lay low and, don't promote on the air that you're going to be somewhere that you might not be. So that was the story behind the story on the Super Bowl situation on the audio you just played.
Yeah, well, I put you, Mitch, along with, some of the people that we talked to tonight. There are a club of people that are friends with Les, that are in this business even, that we understand Les. Like I don't know if we understand him, but we get it. We like being around him. We like the hyperbole that is Les Grobstein, and you were in that group as well. But what is the genesis of your relationship with him? When did you hire him? When did you first hear him? Tell us because you've had vast experiences in this town doing radio. Give us the Grobber timeline with Mitch Rosen.
Yeah, it goes way back. I'm trying to think. It was probably to the AM Loop. I worked with a overnight host by the name of Eddie Schwartz, and I think around 89 or 90, Eddie and I moved from WGN radio to the Loop, the AM Loop, and Les was associated there, I think, with Stephen Gary and Kevin Matthews. So that's when I first met Les and started working with him, and I think we'd put him on with Eddie once in a while. And then we became a sports station, AM 1000 and WMVP, and we started working together and became friendly, and Les started doing late nights and overnights, and we became friends. And then when I went to the Score, we did not have a live overnight show. I think we ran syndication, and then, some of your friends produced and decided to put the mic on once in a while and didn't tell anybody. But, so we had that. And then, I thought, hey, wouldn't it be great to bring the Grobber on? I remember calling him on a Friday afternoon, and Les, good, how are you? And I said, great. I said, I've got a crazy idea. And without even getting the words out of my mouth, he said, I'll be there Monday night, ready to go.
and score overnights were recreated, and it was the great thing about Les was always communicating no matter what time of the day. You never knew when he was sleeping, so we always tried to call or communicate after, like 1 or 2 in the afternoon, because that's when you figure he would take a nap. But a lot of times he would be up early, whether, it would be, seeing Kathy or taking Kathy's dad to the doctor or seeing his other family members or doing, what normal people did in normal hours. But, so the great thing about Les, too, and he built a great friendship and relationship with so many people, whether it was David Schuster or Bruce Levine, who both spoke at his funeral a year ago. It was the relationships, and everybody knew Les was quirky and kind of, did things his own way. You and I both know that, but there was a heart behind him. There was a special person behind him. But how I really think about Les was his relationship with the audience that he built overnight so many years. And I always say this, I said this when Boers retired, and I say this about our medium, which is audio and radio. Performers like you, Mark, and on-air hosts, you don't know anybody really that's listening. You might meet a listener once in a while, but everybody knows you. Think about that the massive amount of people that are working now, or police officers or whoever's driving around, they're listening to you right now, but you don't know, people out there. So I think what Les did was build relationships with the audience that you just, you can't describe in everyday life. And I think that's what our medium does, and I think that's what Les did every night.
It's what our medium does, and it's particularly intimate in the overnight when it does feel. Yep. It may not be smaller, but it feels smaller, but in the good way smaller.
Right. I think it's intimate. I think you use that word. It's intimate. Overnights. It's dark outside, and again, whether you're working or you can't sleep or you get up to go to the bathroom or something's on your mind and you have insomnia, whatever it is. It's an intimate audience, and I think that's what Les brought to this. And I think he brought humor. He was entertaining, and at times he could be serious. When the Packers beat the Bears many times. So I think that's what he brought to this and brought to the audience. And again, it's still hard to believe it's been a year, which it was a year ago yesterday. But I also think the audience should know the relationship that you built over the years. I mean, you started, I think, really getting close to him when he came to the Score, and then when you really started at the Score full time and contributing and being part of the family at the Score. And I think it was special when you two built that bond, and you could really tell, I think, I called you and informed you that he passed away, and I know you and I drove out to his funeral together, and we drove back to the city. It was a hard day for both of us, but I could really see it in your face and the friendship that you built over the years with Les.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I'm glad that you appreciated it as well. And I know you got a front row seat for some of those Grote transitions before we turn it over to Mully and Hanley or to Mully and Haugh. And they were something. And there was definitely a core of people that wanted to listen to that every day just because it, like we talk about all of our transitions on the Score going in any direction. It's a beautiful thing. But, man, did it go in some wild directions. And you would always provoke the situation, too, because you'd be like, ask him about this place or ask Les about this deli or giving me ammunition.
I think I would. I was kind of the secret text producer to you during those transitions, and once in a while throw out a Yiddish bomb your way, and I think you'd shock him with your Yiddish words, or a deli that closed 20 years ago in on Devon Avenue in Rogers Park, and he'd be shocked that you'd pull that out of your what. So I mean, we'd have some definite fun with him, and. It's just sad, how quick it happened. He had the flu for a couple of days, and we talk every day, and then, what happened, him passing so quickly. But just the audience and how much fun and our whole staff, how much they loved and appreciated him, and people really did. And the outpouring of support, not just locally, but nationally, we saw when he passed away from all the teams, how well and well respected all the professional teams in town treated him. We saw what the Blackhawks and the Bulls and the Bears and the baseball teams did in the press boxes, and set up a beautiful shrine at each of those teams on respective nights in his memory. And a couple weeks ago, at the Northwestern game, I know you were there, and his son Scott and Les used to do what was at Northwestern DePaul every year. He used to give out an MVP award after the game, right?
Yeah, he did. And so Scott was there, and he was able to honor a player for Northwestern that day. So, yeah, of course Les was in the middle of all that. I mean, he loved local college hoops, man. Like that in baseball, like 1 and 1A, I would say, like, of his loves. And also Mitch, how about like what's really one of the nice parts about all of this is getting to know some family members of Les Grobstein. You mentioned some of those guys, but getting to know, like, we had Scott. I don't know if you heard Scott. You probably were actually getting your sleep then, but you should listen to Scott Grobstein because he's just great how vulnerable he allows himself to be, and getting to know him and getting to commiserate with somebody who, and Scott kind of sees Les the way you and I do as this character who's hard to explain,
Yeah, listen, Scott and I have become very close in the last year, and I really didn't know Scott up until Les's passing. Scott and his family, 2 sons, and he just, this was a lot for him to take on quickly. Also, Les's sister Holly, again, didn't know Holly, but some interesting stories along the way, and she works in the media business from a sales standpoint and client standpoint, but just a terrific person and great stories about her. But, yes, definitely getting to know the family, and Scott, talking about his relationship with Les, and, the famous story of, flying to Alaska and then flying back to a Super Bowl or something. Those are father-son stories, but to share those with the audience has been incredible. And all the friends that you learn, and still friends with his high school friends and everything like that, Mark, is really incredible in the life of Les.
No doubt about it, man. Did you ever have to discipline Les in all of your years, or was there ever anything that he did or got in trouble for, like that's kind of on the record?
Nothing on the record I can talk about. No, Les, listen, we all make mistakes in life, but Les was just terrific to work with. Looking back at his life, it was just great. You knew at midnight or even earlier, obviously, sometimes, that you turn that radio on through however you did it, listening on the app or the clock radio, next to your bed. Les would be there. And I think Potash earlier said you never thought that, that would end. And it ended a year ago yesterday. And it was just incredible, in his life and what he meant to Chicago and really the nation to have an overnight show. And we do our best to continue that with great content from the day before, and we're going to continue that later this week and next week. And with you doing this tonight has just been incredible. So, I'll leave it there. I'll let you talk to callers. I think it's more important to hear from fans of Les than somebody like me. But I just wanted to, thank the audience, most importantly, for the support and listening throughout the years. And thank you for working tonight. I know you've got a long day ahead covering the press conference. Like you said, will air at noon today. But just thanks for being you, Mark. And I know Les really, really appreciated your friendship over the years.
Well, Mitch, I appreciate yours as well, and thank you for coming on as always, and thanks for being part of this this elite Grobber club that we are all in. Thanks, Mitch.
Well, thank you, Mark. I know you say elite, but the truth is it was really his audience. So it could be a fun little group of friends, but like I said, Les really didn't know anybody out there in listener land, but everybody really knew Les.
Yes, they did. He tried to meet as many people as he possibly could. So we'll keep carrying on here until 5, Mitch. Thanks, man.
All right. See you, Marky. Take care.
Yep. That's Mitch Rosen, the boss of The Score. He runs BetQL. He is Odyssey, ladies and gentlemen. The things that, like Like it's just those little moments, those fragile moments because even though it's morning drive, like right now, it feels very delicate. And that's the way it was when you come in to do, like, when I would come in and do the morning, doing the updates for Mully and Hanley or Mully and Haugh. And it's like everybody's sort of doing their own thing because it's the overnight and you're tired and all of that kind of stuff. And then in the middle of it all, there's Les doing his overnight show. And then I would jump on with Les. And it was all this, like, nice little undercard to the morning show. Like this weird, wonderful undercard. Whether I was doing it with him or not, I mean, just Les in general is what that was. So it was gorgeous. It was.
Bananas. I love them.
Who was it? It was Scott. When we had Scott Grobstein on, starting at 12:10, and he was just terrific. But he was talking about a 1991 playoff game, Bears playoff game that Les, his dad, took him to, but Les was working, and he put him in the Cowboys section apparently. So he was he was around all Cowboys fans. But I got to be honest with you, and I do think of myself as a bit of a Bears historian. I had forgotten that the Bears were in the playoffs in 1991 because that was right before the roof caved in with Ditka in his final year and the first year of the Score, coincidentally.
I was there.
Yeah, Les was there. And I just had forgotten about it. So I just opened up the box score. There's a Grobber box score breakdown like we used to do last year. And the Cowboys did beat the Bears that day 17-13. Ditka against Jimmy Johnson. And for all you youngsters out there, yes, Jimmy Johnson was a coach long before he did anything as a broadcaster. So, yeah, it was those two guys going at it. The Bears lose 17-13. Let's see here. Emmitt Smith had a 1-yard touchdown run. Kevin Butler had a 19-yard field goal. He had a 43-yard field goal. Wow, how about this? Tom Waddle, a 6-yard pass from Jim Harbaugh. The extra point was good, but the Bears fall short 17-13. And that was a superstar era for the Dallas Cowboys, man.
It's a newer type of situation.
That was the mantle being, or the torch, the baton. Let's go baton. That was the baton being passed on. I didn't even realize. See, I didn't even think about that. But the Bears, their run really came to an end after that, and boy, did they ever hand the baton to Dallas, right there in that playoff game. And I know San Fran had a say in the 90s as well in the NFC. But yeah, that was definitely the passing of the baton. Trying to see if there's any other interest. Harbaugh that day, by the way. Jim Harbaugh. Yeah, that's another thing. Harbaugh used to play for the Bears, and he was captain comeback with the Colts. Jim Harbaugh was 22 of 44 for 218 yards, had a touchdown, 2 picks, sacked 3 times for 11 yards as well. Yeah, Jim Harbaugh was always just meh with the Bears, and then when he went to the Colts, he had a nice little run with the Indianapolis Colts. He was Captain Comeback, which I thought was one of the kookiest nicknames ever. Like, I would have hated that. You're Captain Comeback. It just sounds ridiculous. But that's what they called him, Captain Comeback, and he was really good for a while with the Colts, and I was, I'm like right in the pinnacle of my fandom then. I was just pissed at him. I was like, why couldn't you have done that with the Bears? And, there's this whole, like, I showed them, and, Ditka yelled at Jim Harbaugh on the sideline, so he kind of felt like, I'm like, dude, why do you got to be like that? Why couldn't you have just been good with the Bears? So, yeah, that's my Jim Harbaugh story. 312-644-6767. And, boy, I get back to some of these calls here. Let's go to D.C. on the south side. What's up, D.C.? You're on the Score.
All right. How you doing this morning?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm peaceful. I want to give some thanks to my veteran brothers. I always start off. I'm a vet, so I always start off with my Jesse Brown and Hines patients. I always want to give them thanks because we do have insomnia and we up at night. So, with that
DC,
being
thanks
said,
for what you do, man. Thanks for being a veteran. Thanks for serving this country. I appreciate you. So what's on your mind?
Thank you, man. I want to give some honor to Les, man. Les made us Chicagoans feel like we belong. I mean, the conversations he used to have, it wasn't national. It always felt like he was in your neighborhood. He knew your neighborhood. He'd been there before. He was so upfront in how we feel about what the team is going through. If it's the Bears, the Blackhawks, the Bulls, it don't make a difference. Chicago is diehard. Les was diehard. He was the encyclopedia of the history of sports and the best storyteller that I've ever encountered. I haven't called the station in a long time, and when he passed, I stopped. You brought that back to me. You have the charisma that Les has passed on, and I want to thank you as well. And in honor of Les, the Grobster, that's my man. Love.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Well said, DC. Thank you so much for calling, and thanks for the kind words to Les and about me too. Thank you, DC. Let's go to Mark in Evanston. Mark, you're on the score.
Hey, good morning, Mark.
Good morning.
Hey, I've got a good story about Les very quickly, but I wanted to ask you, I was hoping Mitch was going to be on the line still. What are the intentions for overnight at this point?
I think that the intentions are what's been going on, that we carry the highlights and the best interviews from the previous day. So I'll be honest with you, I have no idea if it's anything beyond that right now. That would be a question for Mr. Rosen.
Yeah, because Amy Lawrence is, well, I hear her, I turn it off. I can't take. She thinks she's doing a morning show or something. I'm not sure. Anyway, as far as Steve and Gary go, this is how I met Les. I always had heard him for years, or whatever they could.
Hey, Mark, I want to hear the story. Can you guys put Mark back on hold and straighten out his line? Okay. In the meantime, maybe we go to Kevin in Westridge. Hi, Kevin. You're on the score.
Hi. Good morning. I want to start off by saying that I am from Westridge tonight. I'm here. Usually I used to call Les when I was on the road driving to Cedar Rapids, Iowa for a job overnights. But, I just heard Mitch talking about Vaughn Avenue, which is exactly where I'm at. And that's one thing I always loved about Les. He always used to tell everybody where they're coming from and where they're calling from. And one other thing that I want to designate about Les is what the city did for him. They designated a whole day to him. And for me, and bear with me, I've got a little bit of a cold here, but I'm going to get this out. Thank you, Mark. I just wanted to say that, to see that the city recognized Les. I mean, Les and Chet, Kopic, they were everything in sports when I was a kid growing up. I used to see him in the, Soldier Field and so on and so forth. So to hear Mitch talk about him tonight and Les's girlfriend and his son, it's a wonderful thing. And matter of fact, I haven't called for a year. The last time I called the score was the last night Les was on, which was January 9th. And Les used to, open up the phone and let me talk a little bit about NFL insights. And, Les didn't always agree with all of his callers. Obviously, everybody knows that. And I was kind of the guy that was, pushing the Andy Dalton issue early. Like, we need to have Andy in there and, leave Justin for later. And then I would, he'd argue with me. But on week 19 last year, I remember the conversation clearly that we talked about how week 18 was a great week for the NFL because Jacksonville beat Indianapolis in the playoffs, and that the teams usually on the last week of the season are just kind of slack. But this year they didn't. And again, this year, what happened? Houston beat Indianapolis to kick them out of the playoffs, second year in a row for Indy. And I wanted to call Les because the first thing I thought of when I read that Houston won that, I'm going to call and tell him, now you got to love Lovey, right? You got to love Lovey.
No, I don't have to love Lovey. I don't want to hear it.
Never love Lovey.
I don't care what you say. I don't have to love him if I don't want to.
Exactly right. And one other thing I'd like to share with you is that your producer, Sean Sears, is a wonderful man. So was Les. I used to know him from all the radio guys that I used to hang out with back in the day. And boy, Les can pull your ear. You'd start with one topic, and you'd be 5 other topics down the road within 20 minutes. You'd look at them going, how the hell did we start talking? What did we start talking about? So thank you very much for tonight. Thank you again, Mark, Mitch, everybody put this together. We greatly appreciate his listeners, and we all miss Les and the city. All of us are better for him being in our lives. Thank you.
Oh man, that's touching, Kevin. Thank you so much. I appreciate your call and the words, and what a terrific call. What I think all of the calls have been terrific tonight. As a matter of fact, I mean, man, you know, it's another really weird thing. If Kevin is right that Les's last day on air was January 9th, man, it's weird, man. It's my birthday. That's my birthday, so I guess easy for me to remember, and just a little bit more of that weird, you know, synergy or chemistry that Les and I had. Like I said, I knew in high school that I was destined to meet Les Grobstein and, you know, hopefully work with him, you know, because that's got to be the goal, right? I was in broadcasting. My goal was to work in Chicago, and I assumed that would happen and that I would work with Les Grobstein one day. And yes, and lo and behold, it went down. It happened. Do we have Mark back? What's up, Mark? And Mark in Evanston, we were losing you on the phone, and you were just about to tell us a good grobber story, weren't you?
Hey, yeah. Can you hear me now?
Sound good, man.
Okay. I was Drive one afternoon, and I see towards me. I knew what they looked like. I had never known what Grob looked like, but of course everybody knows him by his voice. Yeah. And the three of them were in a full something or other.
Hey, Sean, I think we're going to have to straighten that. You know, we're going to have to. I hate to do this, Mark, but we're going to probably have to forego your call this morning. It's just breaking up all over the place. We try Tom in McHenry. Well, Tom, how are you, man?
Hey, Grote, what do you say?
Nothing, man. What's up?
All right. I just want to tell you I'm 66, and I'm listening to the Les Grobstein tribute at 4:30 in the morning.
You're awesome. You're the best, man.
Long-time caller. I've been listening to Les since Larry Lujak days and the Bob Verdi days.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, I got a couple of good stories, too. I used to dread calling and when Tom from Algonquin was in front of me because I'd be sitting there on hold while they were going at it about whatever. And I was like, oh, no, it's not Tom from Algonquin. Or else
you know what that reminds me of? I don't know why I'm picturing that scene in Dumb and Dumber where the two are going back and forth singing the song, and then the cop is like completely irritated. Like, that's you. You're on hold having to listen to these two have some inane argument, right?
Well, he couldn't get rid of them, but
I couldn't get rid of them. Exactly.
Yeah, and I think it was Tom from Stone Park also.
Okay,
missed him and Tracy. This has been quite a gem. I found out about it at the last minute.
Oh, but, nice.
Yeah, but I want to tell you what we used to go at it with was the game where Brant Brown dropped the ball.
Oh, really?
I was at the whole series. It was up in Milwaukee back in '98.
Uh-huh.
I had tickets to all three games, and I was on the Cubs side, which was the visiting dugout, and Les was not at the game, but I was, and I had a perfect view of the ball, and I insisted that it was a line drive or more of a line drive, and it hit the palm of Brant Brown's glove and bounced out. Well, Les insisted that it was a fly ball, not a line drive, and I said no. I was there. It was more of a liner than a fly. And a couple of times we got into it about it, and it was just hilarious.
That's so funny. See, now you're making me want to go back and watch the play to see what the exact trajectory was of that devastating Brant Brown drop.
Yeah. And it arced to the left.
Oh,
and
okay.
Brant Brown.
Okay.
Yeah, it was an arc to the left, and Brant Brown ran over, and it hit the palm and bounced out.
Oh.
And we all know how Mike North used to rub it in and play Ron Sano's radio call.
Oh, but the radio call was classic, though. Classic stuff. I mean, That's another whole memorial there around Santo. You know, the stories abound about him. But
I could go on. I could go on about Ronnie. Yeah. I had a relationship with Ronnie. I used to yell as loud as I could at the games. I would walk up the ramp and I would scream out, "Yay, Ronnie!" And I'd do it very loud, and he would open the door and wave to me at the press box.
Wow, okay. All right. I mean, you got his attention. Hey, man, thanks for calling. Yeah, hey, I appreciate you calling, man. I've got to take a break here, though. I mean, like, I know. I'm probably committing Grobber phone etiquette sin by cutting callers off like that, because Les Grobstein, you know, as Greenberg was saying, like, the callers would have to let Les go. Like, hey, Les, I gotta go. That was me with Les. Like, I remember many times where I would do an evening show, whether solo or with somebody, and Les would kind of, hey, you mind sticking around for a segment? And then, you know, it'd be like 2:15, and I'd be walking home out of there because Les would have sucked me into, like, how about just do one more? How about just stay till the top of the hour? Now you can't leave because we were, like, too in deep on something. So remember many a times, many a like, it's such a weird time, the 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. walking home, and yeah, it does stand out in my memories for sure. 312-644-6767. More of your calls coming up talking about Les Grobstein. We'll hook you up on what's going down on the Mully and Haugh show. And don't worry, we've had a couple of text requests. We will get to the 3 technique as well. It's all coming up in Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score.
Everybody, you weren't down there, I was.
We've been celebrating Les Grobstein, the Les Grobstein Memorial Show. We lost Les yesterday, a year ago yesterday. And so we've been having a blast over the last 5 hours just talking about Les and spraying in a little bit of sports. But, man, it's been mostly Les. We have been sustained. See, man, the overnight vibe that Les Grobstein, not only did he have the vibe, but he has passed it down to us that, if it's not Les, if we could talk about Les, that's kind of radio gold too. So let's go to Brian in Calumet City. I think I'm going to like this one. Brian, what's up, man?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm just thinking about Les, and I've listened to him for a long time, and one night he was having this, like, the show wasn't going the right way. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to throw another something in there. And I brought up the 85 Bears Super Bowl run. And they lost the game to the Dolphins. And I was talking about Marino and Lester. After I said what I said, he just went off. And it was the greatest thing I ever seen.
Wait, he went because you were antagonizing him about the Dolphins beating the Bears.
I was kind of rubbing in a little bit, but the end of the conversation was they won the Super Bowl, didn't they?
Yeah, right.
Right, and they sure did.
That's the win. He eviscerated
But he was
you.
going on about that game. He went through like every play in like 2 minutes.
Oh, right. I mean,
and he never gave me a moment even to speak because he just knew he knew everything.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, man. That was. I'll tell you what, man. That game though, it stood out like it was just a train wreck for the Bears in terms of how they were defending, and then Buddy Ryan and Mike Ditka getting into it on the sideline, the whole for one night of the mighty Chicago Bears. It all came undone. You know?
It did. Yeah, it did. Sure did.
Thanks for the call, my friend. Take care. I appreciate it. 312-644-6767. These calls are just hilarious. One of the funniest Les Grobstein moments, I mean, it probably, I would say it's top 5. It might even win a, number 1 spot one of these years. It could be ranked number 1, is the 3 technique story. And I always like to remind people, because I feel good about this because it's a historic moment. I was there. I was there for this. I was on the mic.
I was there.
Yeah, and Les was talking to a caller about the 3 technique, and you'll hear, if you see, this is one of those things, like, now, I know you Score fans, you've heard this a million times, but at one point you're going to hear a laugh, a high-pitched laugh, and that's me. That won't be me now sitting here laughing along with it. That's actually from me because I was there and realizing how ludicrous this call, how sideways things had gone. So here, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the 3 technique.
Tommy is checking in. Tommy, how are you?
Question for you. I'm confused on what a regular technique and a 3 technique lineman is. I'd like you to explain it to me if you could.
A 3 technique. It's something. It's a newer type of situation, but I'm going to try to tell you what they. There's different ways of describing what a 3 technique is. And
I'm confused.
All right. All right.
I've been hearing it, like, I feel like just this year, and I'm like, well, what's the difference?
All right, I'm going to tell you. 3 technique, A-gaps. Well, basically, coaches have spent some 80-plus years trying to do different things. And what they do with the 3 technique, it's to try to an offense tries to move the ball 10 yards, and 11 guys try to stop them, blah, blah, blah. So how do we get to cover 1, cover 2, 3, quarters, man-to-man zone, blitzes, stuff like that? Basically, a lineman is set up for different positions along the line, and their roles are responsibilities trying to do certain things. And what most people know about the 3 technique defensive tackle, you know a few more of them the more you're in the NFL. And basically, the way it is set up, they can't agree. Different coaches have different things. There's a thing called the 0 technique, and Vince Wilfork is involved with that. They have a guy named Pat Williams up there in Minnesota. He plays the 1 technique. The 3 technique, it's a 4-3 pass rushing tackle like Tommy Kelly. Does that answer that a little bit for you, Tommy?
Well, it's polecats, Tommy, by the way.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, that answers my question. Yeah. I appreciate it, Robert.
Shorn Rogers, Kyle Williams, and Kevin Williams were all considered. And, of course, Kevin and Pat played together, and they were known as the Williams Wall up there, too. But they're not together up there.
Let me ask you a question, caller. Henry Cotto or Jerry Martin?
Now you're getting silly. Take care, Tommy.
See, I was there.
It's a newer type of situation.
And yes, I am bragging. I was there. Oh, man. I guess I wasn't listening to the beginning of that call when it happened, because it was just like towards the end where I'm like, oh, my God, what's happening? Les is so stuck right now. He is stuck in Wikipedia hell because, man, Wikipedia can put you in hell if you're trying to be linear. You know, I mean, it's linear, but, you know, okay, early days of the position, and then it's a newer type of thing. And
well, I like that he starts like, well, you know, for 80 years they've been.
I know that's the problem with it's out of like I like Wikipedia, but it's not exactly something you want to read from. You know, I mean, unless you could get the little cut and paste might have helped in that case.
Definitely. He was trying his best. He was trying to get him the answers as always.
Oh, it was beautiful, and I do wonder like how many people would have not stumbled through that question a little bit, in terms like it wouldn't have been to that extent. But in the beauty of not like, see, Les was not willing to give up. He knew that he would not be able to, in his own words, express the definition of the 3 technique. You know, he knows what it is. He knows what it is. He knows what's going on. He knows what he's supposed to do. But sometimes things like that are hard to explain. Well, you know what he does. You know what he does. He's looking for the run game. He's moving the pile. He's accepting double teams. It's your 3 technique. But yeah, Les had to dig just a little bit more deeply.
Oh, hell yeah.